be the Wednesday, but we already have Wednesday covered, right?
That would be more of a theme for GMV since he's the last show on a Tuesday for us.
Yeah, that's fair.
We're also middle of the day.
That's fair. What would Monday is? It would be Monday. I mean, that's pretty easy, right?
Manic Monday?
Manic Monday's good. That's obviously more current, but still obviously ancient, but it's less ancient than Monday, and it's a little more upbeat. Although I never understood Manic Monday because I think it actually describes a bunch of activity that's the opposite of manic, but I digress. Friday, we already have Friday taken care of. So all we need now is Thursday, right?
Yeah.
What would be Thursday's theme?
That's a good question.
Now, is this also a sign that I'm either irresponsible or whatever, but like I consider Thursdays Friday now.
Interesting.
Like my buddy Hester and I go out every other Thursday. We meet at like a different place and just get a beer after work and sit and catch up on what's going on because we grew up together or whatever else. And then Shan and I usually go to dinner on a Thursday night. I consider Thursdays like the first Friday. But I still work hard on Friday. Don't get me wrong.
You work hard?
Thank you. That actually is a fair question. It is a fair question. Good afternoon to you on a Wednesday, Hump Day Wednesday. Eddie Garrison back in the mix. It is Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. And plenty to talk about today. Because you have this, it's kind of like after Christmas. It's kind of like after New Year's. You know, when Christmas comes, it's this buildup for a month long. It's this month-long buildup of suspense and anticipation and not knowing what's going to happen. Am I going to get the gift that I really wanted? Is so-and-so going to like the gift that I gave for them? There are so many events that lead up to it. I got a dinner here. I got Christmas lights here. I've got a show here, all kinds of stuff leading up to Christmas. There's just multiple steps. And then as you go along, you realize it's getting closer and closer, and you love everything about it, and you can't wait for it. And sometimes you open the package, and it's everything you wanted, and sometimes you're like, man, it was kind of disappointing, I'll be honest with you. You never know. But it is awesome. It's adrenaline-filled, and at the same time, when it comes to Christmas, there's always kind of that letdown. But with Christmas, as soon as Christmas is over with, you're like, but we have New Year's. So, yeah, like it's kind of a bummer because the big holiday's over with and we got to wait another year. But still get to kind of take it easy at work because New Year's is coming up and we have New Year's Eve and New Year's Eve and all of those things,
it's
right?
Like Jeff Spicoli, right, in Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
Yeah. Jeff Spicoli's always looking forward to the last fiesta of the year, right? But that's what a little bit of what the Indiana experience is about. It was a month-long buildup. For Indiana fans, it was the trip to the Rose Bowl. It was the trip to the Peach Bowl. It was the trip to the national championship game. It was this month-long journey of euphoria and expectation, and you kind of don't know what's going to happen. You're hoping, but you don't know, and then it happens, and it's perfect, and everything works out perfectly, and you got the Red Ryder BB gun, and everything was perfect, and you're like, oh my gosh, and then the next day you're like, but is it over? Now you know that you have the celebration coming up on Saturday at Memorial Stadium. So you're like, oh, New Year's, I got a new thing to look forward to, yet another festivity.
Make sure you layer up.
And
it's supposed to be freezing this weekend.
It's not going to be very long, right?
Well, I wonder if that's why. It's because it's supposed to be in the single digits and the wind chill somewhere around 0, and there's the possibility of like a winter vortex, as you call it.
Yeah, polar vortex.
Yeah, polar vortex.
Well, it's
rain.
only so this is Saturday at Memorial Stadium, and I thought I saw, Eddie, you correct me if I'm wrong, 1 to 1:30, right?
Yes, but they're opening the lots around Memorial Stadium 3 hours in advance.
It makes you wonder, and I know this is insane to say because it is a university and it should be celebrated on the university campus. I totally get it. You would think Assembly Hall, but that's not going to hold. There's no way you could get everybody into Assembly Hall. So it almost feels like should they say Lucas Oil Stadium, but you can't do that because it's got to be in Bloomington. I get it. It's for the students. I mean, it's a university. I totally understand it. But either way, my point being, Now that Christmas is over with, you're basking in, you're still soaking it in. My man Brian Jacobson is like telling me how like he's still getting people that are telling him like it's surreal, but it's real. And they're photoshopping T-shirts for him. And by the way, Eddie, there's folks selling the contraband trademark T-shirt out at the airport. I got to get my people.
Really?
Yes. Yep. I've had 10,000 people as people are coming back from Miami, and they're selling the shirt with the trademark logo on it.
Is it your exact shirt that they're selling, or is it a different variation?
No, it's my phrase, which is trademarked.
Uh-huh. Is this the same shirt that was on display at a significant sports merchandise store?
Yes. That merchandise store, which I like a lot, I've sent a letter to, and there's talk there. It is the same sweatshirt, but not the same retailer. But nonetheless, I digress. The shop is the official place to buy the trademarked shirt. But I go back and I digress. Everybody's soaking it in, and I love it, all of it. But there is this little bit of a hangover. And that includes last night, Indiana losing to Michigan in basketball. And the big story, of course, and I know Purdue fans feel that we don't talk about Purdue enough. I understand it. They are one of the best teams, and I truly do believe at the end of the year will be the best team in college basketball. And they lost a tough one last night to UCLA, which we'll get into because Brian Newbert's going to join us in literally 25 minutes from right now. But maybe this is a conversation for a later time. And I've introduced this a little bit. I think it's naive, and I think it's presumptive, and I think it's too much in the immediacy to immediately start asking, so is Indiana now football school? Does this kill the basketball program? That's way too much of a knee-jerk reaction. However, there is no doubt that two things I think have taken place. Number one, for the first time, you have a football program that was captivating people's attention and their dollars and their time well into the basketball season. That's virtually never happened in the history of Indiana football until last year. But now it's even, another level. But when I was in high school and did games for North Central on the radio, apples and oranges to everything we discussed today, I realize, except for this. People used to ask me regularly, Jake, which sport do you like calling better, football games or basketball games? And I would always say, during football season, I would say football. But then during basketball season, I'm like, no, it's basketball. So right now, because we're living in the moment of the football national championship for Indiana, what I'm about to say probably I would change my mind if all of a sudden now I look outside and it's 60 degrees and it's Selection Sunday and we're getting ready for the NCAA tournament. But as someone who grew up a diehard Indiana fan, and then in college, my freshman year in college, Indiana went to the Final Four. And midway through my college career, Indiana had Calvert Chaney. They're ranked number one. They probably could and should have won the tournament if everything lined up for them. It was a euphoria. It was a drug that I could never get enough of in terms of the success of Indiana University basketball, because I just simply loved looking on the television and seeing where it said Indiana with a little number one next to it. I loved it. I loved everything about it. And I was fortunate enough in my lifetime to see 3 national championships. Now, the 76 one, it would be disingenuous to say that I actively understood what was going on. I was 3.5. But by 81, I absolutely did. And 87, 8th grade, the pinnacle of your sport fandom, for sure. But from the college football side of things, open disclaimer, I think most people know it, I've always been a Clemson fan, especially in my early adult years to present. And there is, when Clemson first broke through and got there to the point, and I know that they won a national championship in 1981, I get it, 82, 81 season, whichever way you want to look at it, I get that. But what I'm saying is, when they first broke through and started getting to the college football semifinals in the 4-team format, and they got there and they lost to Alabama. That game was played in Phoenix. And then the next year, they broke through again, and they got to Tampa. And I went to Tampa. And I bought all the T-shirts from each step of the way. Oh, my gosh, Sugar Bowl champions. They beat Notre Dame in the semifinals. Orange Bowl champions. They beat Ohio State in the semifinals. All of that. I had all the T-shirt, all the gear, all the way. And then as the years went on, not because of complacency and but literally from a dollar standpoint, eventually it was like, man, I mean, I got like all these sweatshirts and T-shirts, which is wonderful. But you over the course of the years, the high, it's like chasing that original high. You've got to, it's hard. It's difficult. But that first breakthrough, winning it in college football, I'm not certain. I think it may be more euphoric than winning the college basketball national championship. Partially because even though in basketball it's a 6-game, 6-win tournament, it almost feels like it is a bigger task and it's more difficult to win in football. Because in college basketball, yes, if you are a number 1 seed or if you've had like Purdue this year, you're going to play probably a 16 seed to open. Build your own joke, I realize. You win that, and then you play the winner of the 9-8 game. So you're playing a 10-loss team out of the Big 12 or the American Conference or whatever. Then you win that, you get to the Sweet 16. Now you're playing a team that's a 5 seed that probably finished 4th in the SEC. You should win that game. And then the Elite 8, things get pretty real. And you got 3 games, just like you do, I guess, in football. You have 3 games that you've got to win, but all 3 of them from the get-go. I mean, Indiana from the get-go, it was a gauntlet of the biggest of the big right away in that tournament because it's a shortened tournament, obviously. But I just think that there is like this euphoria that happens with the football aspect of it where now there are probably a lot of Indiana fans that are like, man, I'm not certain that's not a greater thrill than winning it in basketball. And people are probably like, Jake, you're a moron. I'd rather win it in basketball. You'd rather win it in both. I get it. But last night with Indiana playing Michigan and Purdue playing UCLA, there was such this still euphoric haze over the city about Indiana winning it in football, and that was still the topic of discussion, and Alberto Mendoza in the transfer portal and everything else, that it was like, man, it is crazy how quickly basketball kind of took a back seat for a minute, and it's regular season versus postseason. I get it. But my question simply is this, and that is, as Indiana's basketball program, as we expected would be the case at this point, is still trying to get itself going. New coach, new roster that had to be put together at the last minute, and it looks like it certainly has flaws. But the impatience that the basketball program, that the fans would have had for the basketball program if Indiana football was what it normally is right now, is it a blessing or a curse for Indiana basketball? Are they getting more time because people are like, yeah, I haven't even paid attention? Or is it the curse of people like, I don't know that I'll pay attention that much anymore because I'm all in on football? Or can you have both? Now, Eddie, you're an IU fan, right?
Correct, yeah.
How much did you watch of last night's game?
I don't think I watched a single minute.
Were you, and I mean this not as a knock on you. I think I'm using you as the barometer. Did you know they were playing?
I didn't know they were playing last night, yes.
Now, Purdue UCLA is one that I will admit partially because the time difference, right? I was like, oh gosh, I forgot Purdue and UCLA played. And it was a great game. And UCLA closed on a 7-0 run. And, you know, I do think that, and we're going to get into this more over the course of today, the travel aspect of it does become a factor. But we knew this about the Big Ten and its expansion. But my point simply is this. With this hangover, and I mean hangover in a good way, this continued euphoria of the football program for Indiana, is this now indeed a football school? Which is a little ridiculous to say because it's 1 year, I realize.
Would you like to know why I didn't want to watch the game last night? Or
yes.
Didn't? I didn't want to be frustrated I didn't want the high of that championship game wearing off by watching that team last night in Ann Arbor. So I knew I'd get frustrated with it.
Jake, let's be honest. This is a great point. How long has it been since IU was a basketball school? They should be a soccer or baseball school, if anything. Excellent point. When you say basketball school, there are only a handful of these. Probably, and you know, Purdue's an interesting one. We'll get to Purdue in a second.
You can make the case they have been a basketball school just not a men's basketball school. Their women's team has had by far
You're right.
more success.
You're talking about Purdue, right?
No, IU.
Oh, well,
In
Purdue
the last
also.
5 years.
Purdue's women's program has been very good, but so too have their men. Yes, you are right about the IU women, right? But when you say basketball school, here are the basketball schools I'm going off the top of my head, okay? The Big East, obviously, because most of them don't have football, but Duke, Kansas, Louisville, Kentucky, Indiana, and then obviously Gonzaga and St. Mary's,
UConn
for sure. And what I mean by that is these are schools that financially and fan support based prioritized basketball. And Indiana always prioritized basketball from a donor standpoint. People that donated money to the Indiana University Athletic Department were donating so that they could improve their lot for basketball tickets. People that gave money to Indiana were doing it even in the NIL standpoint, in the initial aspect of it, primarily because they were thinking of basketball and getting basketball recruits. And when people went out and bought merchandise for the school and they were wearing an Indiana t-shirt, you see a guy in Key West wearing a Kentucky shirt, you're like, oh, you a Kentucky fan? He's like, absolutely, diehard. What he means is I'm a diehard Kentucky basketball fan. And the same has always been true of Indiana. Now, Purdue, I still think of, even though Purdue is the best college basketball program in terms of consistency over the last decade, one of the best, I think the best, but one of the best, and a model of every way that you would want your program run and everything you would want out of a basketball program, Matt Painter's got it rolling at Purdue. And I'm a huge fan of Purdue, Matt Painter, Elliot Bloom, and what they do. But I still think of Purdue to an extent as a football school because there is so much of just the heritage and the tradition of Purdue that is still based around the legacy and the lore of their football program and the cradle of quarterbacks and Ross Aid and always having games, big games under the lights on national TV and et cetera. I don't. That's not to say that is equated to success for them, but that's how it feels for me. But the reason I say this about Indiana is because after last night, the last 48 hours, but more so after the last 8 weeks, and to some extent, year. I think that Indiana's athletic department has been open about the fact that their support, their resources, maybe are not prioritized football over basketball, but rather, at the very least, it's 50-50, and that's never been the case before. And it does feel to me like they are in an interesting period here where there is the possibility that just the overall interest level of the fan base, certainly in the last 3 months, has shifted to football. And now it's a question as to whether or not that comes back. And in today's society, in today's world, you only have so long a period of time to recapture that kind of thing before we live in a short attention span society. And Indiana basketball, if they don't get things going here, their best win of the year so far is Kansas State, who's not upholding their end of the bargain. And so while Indiana, from the metric standpoint, is supposedly positive basketball-wise, they need to start putting together some good wins. And last night, they were never in that game. There's nothing wrong with that. Michigan's darn good. I get it. But they just were never really in that game.
It's just been the theme lately, it feels like, with Darren DeVries' team, Jake, is that they haven't really been overly competitive in some of these games. Like, they were in the game against Nebraska at home in the first half, had a 16-point lead in the second half, and then these second halves lately, this last 2-3 week stretch, have just been brutal. Like, they haven't been able to close out games, and that's been the biggest reason as to why these games haven't been fun to watch lately for IU is they can compete for 20 minutes. They cannot compete for the second 20 minutes, and that's the next element to it. And last night, Jake, one of your favorite players, Tatum Conaway, I think he went down injured because he only played 2 minutes. So, and I know he got hurt in their game prior to Michigan. I can't remember who it was. He rolled his ankle. But I don't know if that's something else to watch, and if they're going to be missing one of their one of the few guys who's been consistent for them this season, then it's going to get even worse with Purdue next.
You know, again, I go back to this, Eddie. I just think that, and Scott Dolson basically said this on the morning show, as he has been kind enough to join the guys in the morning with James, Jeff, and Kevin and Mark Dykton in the morning. You know, he kind of insinuated we're in a new era in terms of the resources from a financial standpoint as to where we're allocating it now with football. And I totally understand it. You look at the Big Ten television contract. The television contract for the Big Ten, which nets each team millions of dollars. I can't remember the number. We could look it up, but I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like $55 million, something like that, per year that each school receives in the Big Ten from the television contract. And that television contract, which includes basically every network, NBC and Peacock, Fox, the Big Ten Network, which is part of Fox, ABC, ESPN, I mean, all of them. Essentially, at some point, the Big Ten is dabbling their toe with every network and getting a slice of that money all the way around. That money is football-driven. The Big Ten expansion, I know I've said this 100 times, UCLA, USC, Washington, Oregon, that was all football-driven. UCLA has more national championships in basketball than any other school in the country. And the Big Ten was like, oh, yeah, great, that's gravy. What about their football program? What can we do to get more people at the Rose Bowl? Because the Big Ten took on UCLA only because the Big Ten actively and originally pursued USC. And USC said, look, if you're going to eventually get Oregon because of their football money and their Nike money, you've got to partner Oregon with a travel partner, and then you've got to partner us with a travel partner. And they said, okay, we'll make that UCLA. And they brought in UCLA because they wanted USC football. And they brought in Oregon because they wanted Oregon football. Oregon's got a good basketball program. Dana Altman's a great coach. Great coach. And the Big Ten's like, yeah, okay, cool. But what about, let's go back to talking about football. What helmets are you going to wear this year? All of this is driven by football. And so Indiana figured out with the NIL and the portal era, look, all of the money, our conference, our television deals, all of it are driven by football. And yes, it's wonderful that we're a basketball school, but you know what doesn't pay in terms of the money that comes in? Basketball compared to football. And it's like in Shawshank Redemption when it comes to football.
Don't spoil it.
How the money rolled in.
Don't spoil it.
That is such a good movie. I am thrilled, Eddie. Shawshank Redemption is going to be for you, Eddie Garrison.
Okay.
What year were you born?
1998.
Shawshank Redemption will be for you like Indiana fans watching that game and that interception to seal the national championship in football, or you watching the Cincinnati Reds win a home game in Game 7. You're going to watch it and say, I had never seen this, but this literally is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't think it would compare to seeing the Reds win a Game 7 World Series.
I understand. But it is a level of greatness that you have yet to see.
That's like IU football, Jake. A miracle.
It was a miracle. I mean, it's been here's the thing. It wasn't the underdog plucky miracle story people are making it out to be because they were really good last year and they're really good this year, right? I mean, but yes, it is a miracle in totality when you consider where they've come from. Last night, though, Purdue, UCLA. What went wrong for the Boilers down the stretch? Because UCLA closed strong. And Brian Newbert, who's going to join us from Golden Black next, I believe he's in LAX. Brian Newbert, we'll talk a little about the game, but we got to talk also about the fact that he has the same level of fascinating interest and hobby as I. And I was literally, I'm like kindred spirit, this guy, brother from another mother when I saw what he did in LA.
He likes going to cemeteries?
Even better. We'll explain next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So Brian Newbert is at LAX. Is he at LAX or is he in Denver already?
LAX. We discussed a different time, and he said, I might be able to do that. I might be at Denver for my connecting flight, my layover, but I'm not sure. I was like, well, can you do 12:30 before your flight out from LAX to Denver? He goes, yeah, sure. I can make that work.
All right. So we'll check in with Brian just a second before he gets to Denver, which is, Denver, and this is another thing Brian and I can talk about. The Denver airport is like all linked to the Illuminati. Do you know
yes.
that?
Yeah.
That's
the new one, too?
Huh?
Even the new one?
So that's what I'm talking about, the new one. The new airport in Denver, and this goes back to, if you've been to the new Denver airport, they have a huge Bronco when you pull into the airport, and it has these like ruby red eyes. And I don't even think this is rumor. It's a terrible, unfortunate fact. There was, I'll say allegedly, a worker during the development of that huge Bronco at the airport that was fatally injured in an accident building that Bronco. And then somehow or another, some website in deep, dark places of the web that probably I'm glad I don't know a lot about, there's a bunch of people that believe that the Denver airport is attached to the Illuminati and has all kinds of hidden tunnels and all kinds of weird stuff. But Brian Newbert joins us now. Excuse me, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Purdue last night, short end against UCLA. Brian, I'm going to ask, before we get to the real topic of discussion, which is you and I have the same interests when driving around Los Angeles, but let's talk basketball first. Mick Cronin last night, and we'll play this coming up, was very open about his displeasure for the travel for UCLA. They kind of had to know what they were signing up for. How much of last night's close for UCLA against Purdue, if you were going to chalk it up to anything, was fatigue or travel anyway a factor for Purdue and not being able to close last night?
No, I don't think so. Purdue plays a lot of guys. I think that they're built to close from a basketball perspective. I think you have to give UCLA a lot of credit for dealing with their circumstances really well. I figured the final 5 minutes of that game would be all Purdue, and the first 3 of those 5 was, and then the last 2 minutes kind of went UCLA's way. So I don't think it was a factor for Purdue at all. I think they turned the ball over in big moments, and a 17% three-point shooter made a big.
Eddie, did we lose Brian?
I think we did.
Are we sure he's not in the Denver airport with the Illuminati? Brian, you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, sorry, we lost. So go ahead. Yeah, we lost you there for just a second.
Yeah, no, I think that you have to give UCLA a lot of credit for closing out the way they were. They had reason to be desperate, and I think they kind of played like it. And, Purdue turned the ball over at the wrong time, and that's sort of the common denominator. When Purdue loses games the last 5 years or so, it's almost always heavily involved. It's heavily involved turnovers that come in bunches, things like that. And they turned the ball over twice in the last 2 minutes after they're up 6. Braden Smith would tell you, and this adds up, that his arm got hit on the one that he picked sixth to Trey Kaufman-Rand. But that's neither here nor there. Had anything to do with it. I think it was UCLA, and it was a 17% three-point shooter making a big three in a big moment.
Brian Newbert is our guest from goldenblack.com. Sorry about that, Brian. We lost you for just a second there. I thought last night, in tell me if I'm wrong here, I thought down the stretch that, and I really, for that game, open disclaimer, only really saw down the stretch. I thought Purdue defensively struggled is maybe the wrong word, but they allowed UCLA's guards to get into operating area for them. And typically Purdue clamps down. Like if you look at what they did against USC, they were able to make plays against USC down the stretch that they did not do against UCLA. How much of UCLA last night, who themselves were coming off kind of an arduous travel schedule, how much of it was simply UCLA schematically might have found something that worked against Purdue? And is there any concern that others could copycat, if you will, anything that may have worked?
Well, Purdue's big. They've got big centers, and they have a big power forward. Everybody tries to go after that. Everybody tries to put them in pick and pop stuff. everybody tries to ISO their big guys, and not everybody has Donovan Dent. So they can try to replicate it all they want, but pulling it off is another thing. Donovan Dent was a superhero last night, and obviously Tyler Bilodeau can really stretch the floor and make threes, and that's a pretty tough combination to guard when you're big. It's a pretty tough combination to guard, period. So people can try to replicate it. People will try to replicate it, but whether or not they can pull it off with their personnel is kind of the other question. Oscar Clough's kind of put in a tough spot there because he has to hedge Donovan Dent to prevent him from getting in the lane, but then he's got to recover to Tyler Bilodeau. That's a really big ask for a 6'11", 250-pound guy. I know people. I'm sure people are one out there. That would mean Coffin Wren comes out. You'd have Benner on Tyler Bilodeau, and then Oscar Clough's at the rim. Every decision you make in a game that close is the wrong one. So, it's a situation where everybody's trying to attack Purdue's size on the perimeter. Everybody will continue to try to attack Purdue's size on the perimeter, and it's just a matter of whether or not they can pull it off the rest of the way.
It's crazy, Brian, because when you think about Purdue, you look at it, and this is the sign of a great team. Anytime they lose, you think, what in the world happened? What's going on? What's is there a problem? Is there turmoil? You have seen this group and the maturation of this group. How much, I guess, mental resolve did they have? Not that going out and losing the game to UCLA is some huge deal, right? But are they the Ted Lasso goldfish? Is this a group that says, you know what? Yeah, so we dropped one, but we got Illinois coming up. We got to turn it around. And then we got Indiana at Indiana, which is a rivalry game. No problem. Back on the focus. What has been your observation of this group of handling the occasional adversity?
Well, I don't know what a Ted Lasso goldfish is, so I can't comment on that.
Oh, man, have you not seen Ted Lasso?
No, I have not.
Ted Lasso says you got to be a goldfish, meaning that you can't have a memory.
Okay. Well, I think Purdue has memories, and I think they have been through every experience imaginable as a group together, and they have almost always responded really well. You've never seen one loss become two losses, become three losses. They've always been really professional about these things. They've always been really steady and really confident, and their messaging after losses has always been, we're fine, and they've always been fine. So I think this is a situation where you don't panic. I think Purdue's fine. I'm sure they think they're fine. They just had a bad last 2 minutes of the game on the road. In a league where you have to bake in road losses. You don't know when they're going to come. You don't know where they're going to come, but you know they're going to come. And I think a couple of years ago when Purdue lost at Northwestern in December, in the I think double overtime, it seemed like the end of the world. I think when the expectations are high around your program, the social media discussion gets a little overheated at times. And there's no way that doesn't get the players. It's just kind of the world we live in. But when the sky's falling, I think that Purdue generally kind of handles that really well. And that Northwestern game was nothing. And that team went on to be as professional and consistent and unimpressed with itself as probably any team I've ever seen. And they ended up going on to the Final Four and won the league by a mile. And I'm not necessarily saying that's guaranteed to happen for this team, but I don't think one loss is going to bleed into the next couple of games here. At the end of the day, it was a bad 2 minutes. I don't think it's any cause for any sort of alarm. That doesn't mean there's not going to be alarm among people who are alarmists, but among the people who matter, I don't think there's going to be any sort of panic whatsoever.
Brian, someone passed this along to me, and I'm hoping that I'm reading this correctly, okay? Someone passed along to me that you had posted in a message board that while in Los Angeles, you did drive past the spot of the infamous O.J. crime scene, allegedly, because you're, quote, a demented person who's into places of infamy. Was that your post?
Yes.
Outstanding. Okay. So I'd like to know where else you've been in LA, because you're talking to basically, I could run my own tour service of infamous places where terrible things have happened, but yet I have a fascination with them across the United States. And you and I could do a 5-hour podcast on this, perhaps.
Okay, so on my first of my 2 days off, I started at SoFi Stadium, tried to see the Intuit Dome.
Okay.
Didn't think I could get in there, so I didn't try. And then I drove up the coast to Santa Monica, up through Manhattan Beach and all that stuff, and tried to get into Dodger Stadium. Couldn't get in there. It's gated up. Drove through Chinatown because of the movie. What else did I do? Drove through Hollywood a little bit. I've been there before, but I just wanted to refresh my memory, and it wasn't a positive refreshment of my memory. Just kind of drove around all day. And then yesterday I wanted to drive by the recording studio where Sublime recorded their self-titled album.
Okay, that's cool.
Many years ago. Couldn't really see anything from the road,
so far a fruitful trip.
Kind of kept moving. And then when I got up to UCLA, I just drove around some more. Went by the OJ house. Didn't want to get too far out of my region for fear of hitting unpredictable traffic and being late for the game. So I just kind of drove around UCLA for a while. That was pretty much it.
Okay, so did you go by
cover as much ground as I could?
Did you go by OJ's house, which is no longer there, or did you go past the condo where the crime took place?
I went by the crime scene on
Right.
Bundy.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And now, were there people like gawking around, because the owner now has put up like a mini wall? Correct.
I couldn't. I was driving by. There was traffic. I couldn't really stop and gawk, and I would have felt funny about that anyway. So
no, you got to do the Query Stop and Gawk tour. As a matter of fact, that's the name of my tour, the Stop and Gawk. I mean, I can take you there. I can take you past the Manson scenes. We can do. I mean, I can do the whole thing if you're into.
Oh, the Mansons! I forgot about that.
I mean, you were right. Listen, Brian, I'm not by any means calling you a Stop and Gawk novice, but if you were at the UCLA campus in Bel Air, you were basically at the base of the canyon where the lobby, or where the Tate residence was, where the Manson murders took place, and you were around the corner from the La Bianca residence. But, again, I don't want to – and it's not like I found out where Spawn Ranch was and went there and found the Manson cave and those sorts of things. I mean, that would be totally demented, right?
I'm going to have to change this flight and get my rental car back.
Now, okay.
I've got more
so
stuff to do here.
Back to the less macabre. And I'm assuming that you have been there before, but UCLA's campus is unbelievable. Now, Pauley Pavilion to me was a little underwhelming, but the campus itself, literally every blade of grass is perfectly green. It is like totally uniform. And you ask yourself why anybody would go anywhere else after making an on-campus visit. That was my impression, but what say Brian Newbert?
Unbelievable campus. And the people who go there it's up a hill, it's down a hill, it's up a hill, it's down a hill, and it is absolutely picturesque. Pauley Pavilion, you never would have known that was the building they were playing in the 60s. You would have thought that they just built that thing 10 years ago. It looks so modern. I think they probably did what Purdue did, and they kind of retrofitted the old arena into a more modern shell, but there's not a whole lot of easily apparent evidence of the old building.
Yeah, I would agree.
Anyway.
But you because you walk in and you're expecting to just like feel history, and I don't know that you feel that. It's more like you feel like multi-sport, complex or whatever else. But
yeah, you're expecting Hinkle Fieldhouse, and
correct.
That you get the Schottenstein Center.
That's exactly correct. All right, Brian, enjoy looking at the macabre of the Illuminati things in the Denver airport when you have your layover, and safe travels back.
All right, Jake. Thanks, man.
All right, Brian Newbert joining us from LAX. Purdue last night on the short end against UCLA. All right, coming up, we are going to talk with Dustin. Now, what time is Dustin, did you say?
He's at 2.
Okay, Mike Nizilik at 1 o'clock, right?
That is correct.
We'll find out the order of events for the Indiana celebration, and we need to get into what Mick Cronin said, because he said something very, very curious, did Mick Cronin. And it ties into what we were talking about earlier. We'll get to it here coming up.
Barry and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The sharp-dressed man, Mick Cronin, kind of is that when he's on the sidelines. He does wear a coat and tie, does he not, as the head coach for UCLA?
He does, yeah. One of the few coaches anymore.
One thing that I will readily admit that is a mental hurdle of Jake Query, I have forever confused Mick Cronin and Chris Mack in terms of where they previously coached. Mick Cronin, Xavier, and then UCLA. Chris Mack, Mick Cronin, Cincinnati, UCLA. Yes. Chris Mack, Xavier, Louisville, right?
Yes.
Always get those confused. But last night, and he's been on this for a while, an open disclaimer, I don't know Mick Cronin. However,
now, by the way, Chris Mack, College of Charleston.
Currently or previously?
Currently.
College of Charleston had a coach by the name of John Crest that in like 1995, I wrote him a letter telling him how impressed I was, the fact he had an 82% winning percentage, and I thought he would be a good coach at Indiana when Bob Knight retired. And he actually wrote me back and was like, well, that's a great compliment. Thank you. Maybe he was the Kurt Signetti that we didn't know about. But Mick Cronin, when Lance Stevenson was drafted by the Pacers or sometime during that time, we had on Mick Cronin, Derek and I did, to discuss Lance Stevenson's time in Cincinnati, and he was fabulous. He was great. He was engaging. He was totally cool. But he has been very outspoken about his displeasure with the travel when it comes to the Big Ten for UCLA. And he also said something very interesting at the end of this clip. This is last night after UCLA's win over Purdue.
I want to thank the Big Ten for giving us 5 of our first 7 on the road, bringing Purdue here on Thursday night, where we don't get back in LA till Saturday night, and giving us the team pick to win the league on a 2 days rest after 5 of our first 7 on the road. I want to thank the Big Ten for that. It couldn't be much worse. Couldn't be much worse. A, I don't think they care about basketball. That's just my opinion. B, look, man, and they ain't moving the city of Los Angeles. I don't want them to, and they damn sure ain't moving UCLA, and I don't want them to. And we're in the league in the Midwest, so that's just going to be what it's going to be. But you ain't got to play 5 of your first 7 on the road and then come home and get the team picked to win the league on 2 days rest. I had 2 Hall of Fame coaches sent me a text. Why do you play Purdue tonight? I just saw you play Saturday at Ohio State. I said, I'll give you one better. They've been here since Thursday.
Okay. And they won, right? But he is correct. There's your answer right there. First off, it does surprise me. I'll be honest with you. When all of this expansion was being discussed, and UCLA and USC to the Big Ten and BYU to what league is BYU in now? Are they like in the Big 12?
They are indeed.
And then isn't West Virginia also in the Big 12? Or South Florida is in the Big 12 maybe? Am I right about that? Like BYU and South Florida play, or California playing in the ACC? He's correct, but at the same time, everyone knew this was going to happen. Everyone knew this. During all of this, everyone was asking, wait a minute, how are they going to handle this from a travel standpoint? How are they going to handle this logistically? And all of us were told, we got that figured out. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. This is the expansion of these leagues because of the interest in the leagues. And the Big Ten has always been the forefront because of the Big Ten network and the footprint of going across the country and everything else. And oh, how the money rolls in. And Mick Cronin's correct. This is all about football. It's all about football. Why do you think Indiana all of a sudden went out and got Kurt Signetti and their national champions, and Indiana's football stadium looked like the Rose Bowl does 4 years ago. 4 years ago on an Indiana October game against Akron or whatever, there's 30,000 people there, 25,000 people there. The Rose Bowl in a regular season game for UCLA, there's 25,000 people there, 30,000 people there. And Indiana saw that and said, you know what? The money is coming from the football side of things. So we got to go and put our resources in. That's why Indiana flipped the script within their own department and said football is suddenly going to be our source of relevance. We are going to be dominant in football. And when I say dominant, I don't mean necessarily on field of the original thought, but football is going to dominate our focus, financially speaking, within our athletic department. He's exactly right. And you know what, Mick? I hate saying it, like you're late to the party. You should have figured that out when you played last year in Bloomington against Indiana and looked up and saw that the balconies were empty. And then looked down and saw that the Indiana football team was ranked within the top 10 and made the college football playoff. That should have told you right there what athletic departments in the Big Ten are prioritizing. And in terms of the travel, he's probably not wrong in the lunacy of it all. But when you're talking about that number of schools over those many states and that many thousands of miles between them, there's always going to be some sort of outlier piece to the jigsaw puzzle that just doesn't quite fit when you're trying to figure those schedules out. And yes, I feel for him, but at the same time, what in the heck did he think was going to happen? What, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, they got nobody to complain to because if they didn't know this going in, I don't know what to tell them. But it is true football-wise. You get a week and you play one game a week. You don't play 2 in a week, 3 in a week, whatever. But it all goes back to the Bob Knight rant at Wisconsin on ESPN back in 1987. You know, we got ESPN. All they care about is these kids got class in the morning. And we're here at 9 o'clock playing in Wisconsin and da-da-da-da. And then where did Bob Knight go as soon as he quit coaching? With ESPN. You know why? Because I got money. Money talks. Money talks. So too does Mike Nizilik from the Bloomington Herald-Times, and he joins us next. Indiana last night, short end of things, basketball at Michigan. I think probably doesn't overly stun anyone. Football, of course, still events going on for the national champion. What year will it be, Eddie, before it becomes just like normal to say, like, yeah, the national champion Indiana Hoosiers?
It's a great question. After they do it again next year?
And this is what always confuses me from a football standpoint. Indiana, are they the 2025 or 2026 national champions? You know, it's like the Colts, when the Colts won the Super Bowl. You go by the season, I realize Indiana's the 2025 national champion, even though they won the championship almost a month into 2026. It thoroughly confuses me. And I always get, you know, when the Clemson years, Alabama years, whatever, people are like, oh, the 19 LSU team. And I'm like, well, was that 2019 or 2020? Because that was the last one right before. And I get totally confused. But Indiana is your 2025 national championship, despite the fact it's in January of 2026 when they won it. Joining us now, Java House Peel and Pour Guest Line. JavaHouse.com is the website. Jake25 is the discount code for 25% off. Mike Nizilik joins us from the Bloomington Herald-Times. And, Mike, let's get to this. The order of events, before we go back and take a look at everything that's happened here, the upcoming schedule, if you will, for Indiana fans as it relates to continuing to soak in everything with this football team. What is upcoming now in terms of the celebrations?
Yeah, I mean, you know, some players are making some appearances around town. I know Fernando Mendoza is going to be out at the Bloomington Dick's Sporting Goods. You know, some stuff like that. But, I mean, the biggest thing will be Saturday. Obviously, they have a celebration planned, I believe, at Memorial Stadium. I don't know if like a sort of itinerary has been out, but, you know, they've released some details about when fans can get there, you know, and timing of the event. So that'll be the big kind of blow off. And then obviously players will start kind of going their separate ways as they, you know, a lot of these guys get ready for, you know, they graduate a ton of seniors and obviously a lot of draft hopefuls. So they'll be on their way to sort of solidify their draft stock.
Now, I'm curious of this, and I don't know if you know this or not, but I saw that it's only a 30-minute thing happening on Saturday, correct, at Memorial Stadium?
I did not see the exact time because I was flying this morning and did not see. I mean, I would assume like I thought maybe an hour would be what it would be, but I did not see it exactly.
Well, the weather's going to be brutal, so that's the reason I asked.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was the
And I get it, Mike. It's hard. You know, there's really kind of nowhere to. Do you know what exactly is planned? Is it just a stage, couple of speeches, trophy presentation, and then, you know, throw some toilet paper off?
I mean, that's what I would assume. Like they were still formulating those plans when they got kind of on the plane, you know, on Monday because they didn't, or I mean on Tuesday because they didn't fly back. They had a winter's press conference. They were still in Miami Tuesday morning. Didn't get back till, I mean, you saw kind of videos of obviously them kind of the buses. They flew back into Indianapolis. So that was still being worked out. And, you know, like this is all sort of, you know, there's no manual in place.
Right.
Right. Like this is all like new thing, you know, like we didn't, that's on page 55, our championship celebrations for football. Like this is all new territory. So they're sort of working through that. And I mean, like you said, I mean, the timing of it, you got kids that have to kind of go on. You got the coaching staff sort of moving on now. You know, they've got things they've got to accomplish here before, you know, the next couple of weeks when they do get some time off. So you don't have a lot of options. I mean, really Saturday and Sunday were it. And I mean, the weather doesn't look like it's going to be cooperating, but I mean, that's really the window you had. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. Yeah, I guess it is. I'm looking at 1:30. Yeah, so I mean it'll be brief, probably because the weather's probably contributing to that. Like you said, I imagine a couple of speeches and show the trophy off and just kind of celebrate and let the fans see it.
Right. Okay. So let's go back to this. This particular, and we've broken down everything that happened in terms of the game itself, but and to use a media term, Mike, to kind of advance the story, the next, if you will, step for all of this would be number one, and that is retention of roster and rounding out of roster of pieces that will no longer be there. We know about Alberto Mendoza. Are there other players that would enter the portal? I'll begin with that question.
A backup offensive lineman entered today. It was Evan Lawrence, I believe. I mean, you're going to get, I think, guys a little bit lower down the roster. But like I said, I've kind of viewed it as there's not a lot of fat on the roster still because of the amount of seniors you got. You got a lot of young guys. And so, I mean, there's going to be opportunity for playing time at a lot of positions next year. And so, I don't necessarily know, especially when you've got a team now that in theory has championship aspirations. Why do you necessarily leave so quickly? It'd be different if you were in sort of a rough spot, but I don't think that's the case anymore. And so I wouldn't be as worried. Obviously they're surprised. Alberto is a surprise considering kind of what the talk was from even directly from him leading into this week. His decision to leave, but that could always happen. I think the draft decisions are a little more intriguing. I think Pons, he had just announced or got announced by the Senior Bowl that he's going to be participating. That's likely a sign that he's going to, an announcement for him will probably be forthcoming about the draft. Carter Smith said he's coming back, which was, I think, huge news to get the returning, Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year back in the fold. He kind of said that after the game. So got a couple other guys. I think Omar Cooper's an interesting one. Does he go or stay? I think he's kind of, some projections have him like in the mid rounds, but, I think he's a guy that might be able to help his draft stock, but obviously gave some good tape in that title game for scouts watching. So those are the decisions I think you're looking for right now.
Okay, with this, Mike Niziolek is our guest, Bloomington Herald-Times, talking about Indiana football, their national championship, and everything that comes with that now. I'm curious of this, Mike, and maybe we won't know this for a couple of years, right? But once you get to the top of the mountain, the reality is then people start wanting to pluck away your players, and it becomes more of a challenge to maintain probably some form of consistency of roster. The Alberto Mendoza thing, I think, surprised a lot of people, but at the same time, it shouldn't, because Curt Cignetti has always said, production over potential. And that's not to say that Mendoza has not been somebody who has produced for them when his number's been called, but it's been late in game situations. We know that they go to TCU for the quarterback situation there. Are we going to see this, do you think, routinely, where Indiana is using experienced players from elsewhere for their roster, or was that out of necessity to get them to this point, and now it's about player development of those they get organically as young players?
Well, quarterback's sort of unique just because obviously there only going to be one. And so, I think their plan was to let Mendoza compete for the job, but, if he wanted a straighter path to a starting job, going to Georgia Tech was sort of the move you had to make, right? You obviously Josh Hoover's going to come in, he's going to be highly paid. And so the indication is he'll have, maybe an easier path. But I mean, I think if he outplayed him, there would have been a world in which he could have been the starter. I don't think you could rule those things out. That happened to him in high school. A kid transferred in and that was expected to start, and he just got on the practice field and beat him, right? And so quarterback's unique. I think they had, last year they had teams trying to poach their players, especially in the spring portal window. And there were some scary moments from what Curt Cignetti talked about at the Big Ten Media Day and talked to me. I had an interview with him in May, and he said, it was dicey. That was when he was actually worried. It wasn't in the winter, it was in the spring. No spring portal window now. I think that helps. But so, that's, he said, what was it, $1.3 million, I think was an offer that he said at Big Ten Media Days the guy got, and, they had to match it. And so those things are happening constantly, and they've done a good job with retention so far. Obviously, the portal will be open for them now an extra couple of days through the 24th, so you're always on guard. The quote he gave me last year was, your antenna's always up. And so I think that'll be the case here for the next 4 days, and see what we got going forward. But, I mean, their transfer haul right now is fantastic already. So, I mean, you have to feel good about the players they got back. I mean, I think that they're going to retain, a core group of this roster that has eligibility left, and the pieces they're adding.
Mike, do we know, and maybe it would be speculative, I don't know, but do we have an estimate? Obviously, it was worth it. I'm not poo-pooing it at all. It's the reality of today, and I give credit to Indiana for being kind of in front of it all. Do you have an idea of what their payroll, odd to say, was for this year, the total amount?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pin them down on numbers. I know a colleague, Zach Osterman, did some reporting on this kind of leading up to the championship game. We had always heard that the revenue sharing was like around $20 million per team or per school for the athletic department, and large majority of schools, the significant chunk of that was dedicated to football. So that's kind of like your starting point, like a large portion of your budget, probably upwards of 50%, 70%, 65 to 70% of that 20 million, I believe, is where kind of Indiana came down on football. And then on top of it, Zach had reported kind of, you think around 25 million was last year, but also you got to remember the rules in which last year's roster were put together, especially the guys that were locked into deals sort of in the winter, was different because they could be, they were solely dedicated or more, and it could be structured differently because it wasn't part of the clearinghouse and NIL deals. So it was different. So now you're going to probably get a cleaner look in terms of what the revenue sharing split and what teams had to spend over. So it's hard to say, and this year won't be the same. It's not 1-to-1 anymore because they instituted the clearinghouse in the summer, and sort of the way the rosters were constructed were a little different.
Do you think it's sustainable, Mike? And I don't mean, so long as you have boosters, I get it, right? But I believe, and I keep saying this, that you're going to have kind of these little mini dynasties, and like a team's going to be dominant for, have their 3 to 4 years in the sun, then they go away for a couple of years, then they come back again, because it's going to be cyclical that works along with what kind of big booster donations you're getting. And unless you have a booster that's willing to write you a check for $15 million a year, you're going to have ebb and flow there. Am I off base?
Well, I think there's two separate questions. Is the model sustainable? I don't think so, in terms of like what they're doing and like all the different rules and eligibility and NIL. Like it's all a mess. It's like a disaster, right? And so like that's part of the conversation, right? Like, I mean, things will probably have to change at some point. I do not know what direction things go in. Like they can't even agree on the playoff, right? Like there's no sort of stepping up and trying to these voices kind of to better the sport. So like that part's, I think, is a big part of it, because like that affects kind of what you're talking about. Like, is it just schools that can muster up support for a certain amount of time, get like a benefit and like rise up then rise back down? But I will say, one, Indiana's well positioned to sustain the success. Because the money comes in from what they just did will help them and sort of lessen maybe the burden on some of those donors or some of the other obligations they have to do. And so like I think you also have to really good setup in the athletic department, have to have, and they've really prepared for this kind of even going back. Pam Whitten spoke about this kind of the week going back to the game to sort of set up this success going back to like 2021 and coming up with a model in the athletic department, a financial model I'm talking about, to sort of like, how do we cover all these costs? Revenue share is coming. What do we do? And Indiana positioned themselves well to do this, because it's not just about donors. I mean, that's a big part of it. That's a big part of the NIL. But I mean, you have to, like there are some athletic departments that are so in the red that like they can't dig themselves out of it. It's not going to matter about donors, right? And so, I mean, you see that like UCLA is a school that has a lot of financial troubles. So like they can't get to the point Indiana's at right now because they have all other sorts of problems. So like Indiana has positioned themselves well to keep this going. But to your point, like what's the future hold? God knows with what this model will look like in 3 to 5 years. Maybe things change, and I don't know how that impacts individual teams, because I don't even know what the rules will be at that point.
Again, Mike Niziolek is our guest, Bloomington Herald-Times. Here's one other question about that before we get on to something about next year for Indiana. And I don't know the answer to this, Mike. I'm legitimately asking, so I'm not rhetorically asking this like like the guy yelling at clouds. What now are the academic requirements for a player? Because, for example, as guys are now, you heard Carson Beck. I mean, a lot was made of that. I don't even know if he was taking, Fernando Mendoza graduated from Cal. I assume he was taking like an online graduate course. I have no idea. Is there a minimum requirement?
I believe he was taking a couple virtual courses. So there is a requirement. I do not know the extent, and I don't know how it varies per school. Hours wise or credits wise, but because he did talk. I mean, Fernando talked about that earlier this season. That he went to Haas Business School, obviously a very prestigious school, and he talked about his class requirements obviously were much heavier in previous years than they were this year. Not to brag about it, but he just, was talking kind of about, it was a question about what his schedule like or what his routine was like. So there is when players graduate, obviously their class load's less. But I mean, they do have to, I think it also changes like undergrad versus graduate students. Right. And so like, I do not know the exact credit hours, but I would say undergrads obviously have to take more, but once you've graduated, there is some leniency. And I mean, now you get, and we've kind of now are getting through a lot of the COVID year guys where it was like 8 and 9 years, which was getting ridiculous. But now you're sort of still seeing, the JUCO rules sort of up in the air, and you're still getting 5 and 6 year players. And so, but yeah, they benefit from that, but they still do have to do some.
Okay. Let's talk about roster for next year, Mike, in terms of, who's there, who's not. I want to begin with this. A guy that, and somebody asked me to ask about this. It's a really good question. Tyler Cherry was a pretty highly talented quarterback locally out of Center Grove, went to Indiana, suffered injury, sat out this year. I assume he is still part of the program. Would he be somebody that then becomes Hoover's backup with the departure now of Alberto Mendoza? Where do things stand there?
Uncertain. I mean, he was on like a student coach, so they kept him in the fold while the injury. I think it's all independent on his health. That'll be a question we kind of ask Curt Cignetti the next time. I think we get, when you kind of go through all the roster kind of question marks before they kind of go off onto their break before the spring. That is an interesting question in terms of like, I think it's all about just if he's healthy enough to play. And so will he be factored into next season? That'll be the question. I don't think, even if he came back, that they will just default and assume he'd be the backup quarterback. Too young, too inexperienced, injury questions. I still think they have to go find something.
Okay, when you look at not only players who have no more eligibility, but also the possibility of transfer portal or areas where they have not been able to get players in the portal, what area of the Indiana football team for next season when they begin their defense of this title are going to be the big question marks?
Their portal haul right now has answered a lot of the questions that they had. Like and I think right now it's more sort of like filling in holes in depth. Like could they use a backup linebacker? I think an extra veteran linebacker with experience would help them. The backup quarterback, I think, opens up. Maybe that is your most pressing need because you saw in 24 how important that start Taven Jackson made was to sort of keep the playoff hopes on track against Washington. So like you need a backup quarterback. I mean, they've addressed safety, maybe another interior guy at defensive tackle. But I think you have a really good starting base there. Like, they're coming from a point of strength at a lot of these positions. Like, if you lose Pons, they got a 2-year starter out of the transfer portal. You're probably bringing back Jamari Sharp, the guy who just got the interception to win the national title. Like, they're really in a good spot in a lot of these places. And especially with Carter Smith coming back, like you thought, now they have probably 4 starting linemen coming back, basically, essentially. And then they added a starter. And now you just kind of got to move a guy to center, basically. So, I mean, like, there's just not a lot of holes. And that's what I'm saying. Like, they basically went that first portal weekend and been like, look, get on the bus now because we're shutting things down in 48 hours because we're going to go back to coaching and getting this team ready to play. And most of the guys did. And those are their first choices at a lot of the positions. And I think that set the tone for what this roster looks like next year. And I think you have to feel really positive about it.
Mike, I want you to enjoy on Saturday from 1 until 1:30 while you're covering the celebration, the fact that it's going to be 3 degrees and freezing rain. But you know what? Indiana fans will not care. I'll tell you what, they will not care. And I've always said, Bloomington and the state of Indiana and central Indiana and Indianapolis are heaven to me, but they must also be hell because hell's frozen over because Indiana won the national title, right?
Maybe there'll be a spot open in the press box I can stay warm in.
There you go. Mike, I appreciate it as always, man. It's been a busy run for you, I realize, but you've answered the call each time, and I always appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right, Mike Nizilik joining us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Eddie, it's very, very similar to when the Colts won the Super Bowl. That was, if you were to go back, you can go on, there's like a website where you can go and look up weather records from like what the temperature was on certain days. And I kid you not, in my mind, when the Colts won the Super Bowl, and I don't mean the night that they won it, but the next day when they arrived back in Indianapolis, and they had like a makeshift parade. I think that they weren't planning on doing a Super Bowl parade, and they didn't really put much thought into it. And people literally were like, they have to do a parade, right? And they planned on a celebration at the RCA Dome. But they didn't really plan a parade route. And literally, as the team landed, someone said, well, we have to have some sort of a parade. So they went and got a bunch of the floats for the 500 Festival. When I say the floats, I just mean the platforms. And they had like probably 4 of those worth of, different players on it. And I actually do not remember Peyton Manning being involved in it. But I remember Bob Sanders being in the back of it and looking like a rock star. But Bill Polian held onto the Lombardi Trophy on the front float and never let go. Like, it looked like it was frozen into his hands. And he had a grin on his face, but it was like frozen. It was the coldest. It was so cold. And I was right on Monument Circle. Norman Cox from Channel 6 was screaming to everybody that it was canceled because it was too cold. He had on a Cleveland Browns hat while he was doing his broadcast from the circle. And then and he wasn't wrong, because people were like, wait a minute, I don't know that we're really doing this. And then all of a sudden, here come the like float things driving down they went up Capitol, around the circle, back down, and then over to the RCA Dome. And that was it. But it was so cold. In my mind, it was like 10 below out. Actually, if I had to guess, I would say it was 7 degrees. Now, we can look up. Let's look at it this way. Eddie, you ready?
What day was that?
That's what I'm looking up here. So what can you look up? We're going to go over under. If my mind tells me it was 7 degrees, then I'm going to give myself a 10-degree buffer of saying, no, it was warmer than that. You just were standing in it, so you felt cold, and it was in your mind, whatever. So I will say that the official record says it was 17 degrees.
I think you should go with 5. I think we need to minimize that gap a little bit.
Okay. So what is the over-under you're giving me in terms of the window of the margin of error? Like, if this was one of those.
So technically I am giving you 10 degrees, but I'm giving you 5 either way. So if you said it was 7, I'll give you an answer from 2 to 12. Anything within 2 to 12 will give you a winner.
Okay. Now, it was like total makeshift. It was just like thrown together. Okay, now, I need you to look up for me, please. Do you have before you a website that tells you temperatures in archive?
No, it was the Monday, right? The 5th? Is that when they did it?
No.
What day of the week was it then?
I am
can't
looking
remember.
right here. Okay, it says here there will be a parade. Indianapolis will welcome the Super Bowl champion Colts home with a parade on Monday. There you go. The team arrived at 4 o'clock p.m. and went to the Colts camp on the city's west side, so the parade is not expected to start until 5:30 p.m. So, yes, it was Monday, but 2007. So this would have been, we'll look it up on the other side. You're giving me, what is the window that you are saying that I would be accurate, Eddie? Give me again what numbers you're giving me credit for here.
So if you said that it was 7 degrees, I would give you anywhere from
my final
2 to 12.
answer. My final answer is 12 degrees. My final answer is 12 degrees. That's
Okay.
my guess. We'll look it up and see how close I am next.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Okay, so here's the thing about the Super Bowl parade. Paul the Mailman points out, I'd forgotten about this. The parade was a little bit screwed up because the Pro Bowl, Manning and others had to go to Hawaii on Tuesday. I forgot about that. So there was, and then in addition to that, their flight was delayed coming back. I do remember that. They were scheduled to land at 4. Then that got pushed to 5:30.
This Paul?
Hey, it's Paul. I'm the director of giddiness, and you're feeling giddy on Query and Company on the Fan.
Two Paul the Mailman. That's one. The other one is the one that sent me that message.
Okay. I didn't know which Paul
Hurley.
was.
Paul Hurley is now retired mailman. So he's mailman emeritus. We should make that distinction, right? I'm looking right here, Eddie. I think I officially locked in at 12 degrees, but my initial guess was 7, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. On February 5th of 2007, at 4:54 p.m., it was 10 degrees. But again, delayed until 5:30, right?
Mm-hmm.
At 5:54, it was 8 degrees. And by 6:54, it was 6 degrees. So right in there, 7 degrees. I must have read somewhere 7, and that was stuck in the depths of my brain. I'm not giving myself that much credit. But it was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a high of 10 and a low of -5 in 2007.
Yeah, the low was probably at
and then
12:30 or whatever.
2008, pretty historic day. It was 65 degrees.
Are you serious?
High of 65, a low of 41 in 2008.
Well, think about when the Super Bowl was here. I mean, I remember when the Super Bowl was here, it was the most surreal thing ever. I mean, doing a zip line, it had to have been 55 degrees outside.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
It was awesome. That was, now, I don't know why this is the case. It shouldn't be. What we do is not hard work. It is not manual labor. We're not saving lives, none of that. That Super Bowl in 2012, and if you remember, the Super Bowl, when it was here, that was the off-season of uncertainty because it was coming off of the Colts' disastrous season, the Peyton Manning neck injury, Curtis Painter, Orlovsky, winless, suck for luck. And that offseason, and for the Colts, the offseason had begun well before that, but that time period, I remember being on Radio Row for the Super Bowl. And, those things, you sit there and it's just a cattle call. They just bring over all these former players. Hey, do you want to talk to Joe Montana? Just make sure you mention Hippie's nasal strips, okay? And then, and then the next one comes through.
What's the other thing that Brett Favre used to do or still does? Copperfit?
That's embezzlement. No, that's not something that they wanted necessarily for you to talk about.
Is it Copperfit? Is that what that was? It was like that sleeve thing? A compression sleeve type deal?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's pitching something like that, right? I mean, I don't remember his specifically, but yes, something like that.
By the way, do you have a cattle call?
What
does a cattle call sound like?
Me. That's a cattle call.
Joe Montana also Skechers, right? Is that
Yeah,
him?
that's right. Skechers, yep. And some of the players, you feel bad because you're like, oh, man, I forgot about that guy. He was the number 3 tight end on the team in '83. But what reason would I have to talk to him? But you're sitting there, and the whole conversation for the whole week was about what the Colts were going to do. And that's when the Colts put out that photo of Peyton Manning at a party with Jim Irsay and John Mellencamp, and it was like Peyton Manning attended a party with owner Jim Irsay, and a good time was had by all.
John Mellencamp, you say?
Everybody was there, and Johnny Cougar.
Yeah.
Literally the entire topic with everyone was what is going to happen with Manning and the Colts, and are they going to keep him? What are they going to be able to do? And this is like the weirdest thing to say because it's not brain surgery that we do, and it's not manual labor, but that was the most professionally tiring week of my life. I loved it. It was an honor to be a part of it. It was surreal, but it was mentally exhausting because it just was non-stop.
Even more than a month of May?
Yes.
Wow.
It was the most tired I've ever been. I have no idea why. Maybe because the month of May you're going on adrenaline. I don't know, and it's just different.
Now, where were you for this?
The JW.
So, okay, I was about to say you weren't.
That was the media hotel.
Yeah.
But speaking of Mellencamp, not only was he there for that and a good time was had by all, but a good time's had by all anytime he's in concert. Do you know a Jake Query fun fact? This is literally revoke my Indiana card. Revoke my Indiana status.
You've never seen Mellencamp in concert?
That is correct. I've never seen Mellencamp in concert, which is like fairly surprising.
Is this where I would drop my headphones and walk out like you did when I told you I hadn't seen Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, for someone of my age range, that's almost inexcusable.
You can come over here and produce your own show now. Then
he literally, I mean, he performed concerts in my college years, in Bloomington and around the area, seemingly all the time. And it just was one of those kind of like Hootie. Like it's not that I didn't want to see him. It just every time I was supposed to see him, something popped up. But we have tickets to give away for Mellencamp. Is that correct, Eddie?
Yes, we do.
This is going to be when and where?
It is at Ruoff Music Center this summer. The specific date, you ask? Saturday, July 18th.
Okay. I actually have the world's greatest trivia question.
Now, don't call now. We haven't played John Mellencamp yet.
I have the world's greatest trivia question that I've been keeping locked and loaded for very special occasions. Should we use that trivia question for these tickets, or what form or fashion would you like to, Eddie Garrison? I will allow you to decide how we distribute
On a scale of 1 to 10, how challenging is said trivia question?
It's not. I mean, 7. But what is fascinating to me, everyone seemingly I could write down for you the most common answers that will be submitted. One of them would be the right one, but the order in which they are oftentimes recited.
Now we have 2 pairs to give away today.
Okay.
So do you want to hold off until Friday when we have one and it's our last pair, but JMV also is giving away Mellencamp tickets this week too?
You mean in terms of to give them away, or in terms of the trivia question?
Do we want to hold off on the trivia question for Friday when we just have the 1 pair versus 2 pair today and tomorrow?
There's a chance I'm going to take Friday off.
What?
That's the only thing.
What?
Well,
it's Wednesday. What the heck?
They have this weird thing here where if you work on a holiday, you have to then burn it within like 5 days. And I worked on a holiday.
I'm aware. I worked on a holiday too.
But you burnt yesterday.
That's a different reasoning. Yeah.
So which way would you like to do it? I will let you decide.
Let's save trivia for tomorrow then, if you're going to take off Friday.
Okay, so when you hear Mellencamp playing, that means you got to call in. Is that how we're doing this?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do it that way. And by the way, speaking of Indiana football, pretty cool thing that you can have sitting right on your desk to commemorate Indiana's national championship. We'll talk about that in 10.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You know, over the years in doing this,
we just had a major tease, Jake. I don't know if you caught that last commercial in the break.
I did.
It was promoting the fact we have John Mellencamp tickets to play.
I thought about this.
And there was Mellencamp playing there on the end. And now the phone lines are lit up.
Eddie, I mean, we should probably be people of our word, right? We should probably be people of our word.
We probably should, but we got a guest coming up here.
It's your rules. I mean, you said when you hear Mellencamp.
I know.
Maybe in that big noggin of yours, you should have thought these things out,
well,
right?
I probably should have looked forward, paid attention.
Just saying. But over the years that I've done radio, there have been a number of occasions. The two that come to mind would be the Colts and then as well Notre Dame. Those two jump out where, and this is pretty cool. You always see the commemorative footballs, right? A football that has like a white leather panel on it, and then we'll have the image of a team or a player or something like that, or like autographed footballs. During the Super Bowl that I was talking about in 2012, I did a fundraiser where I had two footballs that were signed by basically every person that came by the Radio Row signed it. There's I gave them to two different charities, but I remember they had like 7 Hall of Famers on them. But there are also commemorative footballs that can be done after a significant win. You know, you see people that'll have it usually on your desk or in a workplace in your office is kind of cool to have something like that, especially if you went to the game. And Nyko Sports is the company that puts together. Bob Ibach has been a friend for years, and Bob used to work for the Chicago Cubs in their PR department, and he's worked with Nyko for years where they put together fundraisers. And that's kind of the cool thing about it is when you're talking about a football that commemorates a feat or an accomplishment, to be able to say, yeah, but, it's one thing to just make money off something. It's another to say we're making money off this for something that a team in your area did, and we're making sure that we're giving some of that money back into your community. That's what's pretty cool about it. And Bob reached out. I've talked to him on a number of occasions over the course of the years, and usually if I'm talking to him, it means that something great has happened within sports in the market, which is why it's always a pleasure to talk to him. Bob Ibach joins us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line from Nyko Sports. Bob, how are you?
I'm doing good, Jake. It's been a while since we chatted, but I've always enjoyed our past conversations, and you're right. Usually when we talk, we're doing something that's also good for the community. And I know in this case, with Indiana winning the national championship, we're working with the Extra Yard for Teachers, which is the official charity of the college football playoffs. And what I'll be talking about, this special limited edition full-size football, a portion of the proceeds will go back and help out school teachers in the state of Indiana, which is very important to me because I know, and I think you could probably voice the same opinion. We all grew up with school teachers, whether they be grade school teachers or high school teachers or college professors or whatever, and they've helped us along in various stages of our life. They've been our mentors, and it's good to be able to give back to that organization, which has been the official sponsor of the college football playoffs and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for school teachers, and the money will stay in the state of Indiana. So with that, I want to talk a little bit quickly about this fully licensed football. It's full size. It comes with a numbered certificate of authenticity. Only 5,000 of these will ever be made, and it's all the logos and the information on the various panels of the football are embossed. It's a way of keeping this looking preserved, brand new for years and years to come. I know in my own man cave, some of the footballs and basketballs that I've collected over the years in my sports career have stayed pristine looking for years to come. So there'll only be 5,000 of these, and before I give out the phone number and website how you can get these, because we've been on your station earlier this morning, got a great response from people who ordered, and these things are probably 1/3 of the way already sold out. So I would urge people to do this sooner than later because it's a very historic football. Going 16-0, winning the school's first national championship in football ever is an amazing feat. And the way they knocked off some of the opponents along the way, Alabama and Oregon and so forth, and that 27-21 win against Miami has just been huge. It's got the whole country talking about this. It reminds me of the basketball movie, and I think they will make a movie out of this with the way Mendoza and company have aspired to go on and create their own image. On the top panel of the football, we'll have the undefeated season, 16-0, all the schedule of the opponents and scores, so you'll be able to remember exactly what the season, how it unfolded. It's got a beautiful Indiana helmet there. On one of the panels, we've got the beautiful national championship logo, and we've got the Rose Bowl and Peach logos included on the football. You'll also get on a panel Indiana football facts, some trivia, Indiana football history, and then we also have another panel on there that features the Big Ten championship logo and the score and the opponent, all that on there. And it's exclusive to Nyco Sports. You will not find this at any other place other than doing it this way because we want to make sure that we continue to give back to the Extra Yard for Teachers. It's a group that I've worked with going back since the inception of the college football playoffs, and we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for them. Now, the two ways you can get this, they're $129.95. Everything is fully licensed. You'll get that numbered certificate of authenticity. The toll-free number to order is 800-345-2868. That's 800-345-2868. If you can't get through the phone lines, don't panic. You can go right to the website. You can order it there very quickly. NycoSports.com. It's spelled NIKCO Sports.com. Again, that's NIKCO Sports.com. And that phone number one more time, 800-345-2868. $129.95 will snag you one of these exclusive footballs. And I guarantee you, you will have people walk into your home or office or wherever you display it and go, wow, where did you get that football? And know that these will appreciate over time because anytime a university wins something for the first time, goes undefeated like they have in 16-0, it becomes a really historic piece of sports memorabilia.
And the cool thing about it, as you mentioned, is the fact that, because you do see this, Bob, is, somebody will buy something like that, and then, after like 3 years, it fades or the color fades.
Yep.
Because it's embossed, that's not going to be the case, which is the cool thing, right? And
no, you're so right. I have stuff from my sports career going way back to the middle 1990s, and they look as fresh as the day I received them. And then I compare them to some of the things from my career when I was in the front office with the Chicago Cubs in the 1980s, and that has faded. I have a baseball sign when I went to dinner. I was lucky enough, Howard Cosell emceed it. We were out in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we were doing a fundraiser. Billy Martin, the Oakland A's manager at the time, put it together. And that night, all these old Yankees showed up, including the guys at my table. I had Mickey Mantle to my right and Roger Maris to the left, and they both signed the baseball. Thanks for having dinner with us, Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle. And Maris's autograph has started to fade. And that's because it was probably sitting in the sunlight someplace at my previous home. So I can appreciate, having stuff on here like this embossed. It will keep it looking beautiful.
Were you at table number 61? I guess you would have had to have been, right?
Jack Brickhouse was the radio guy back in those days. Hey, yep. And he knew I grew up in the Bronx and knew I was a Yankees fan in the 1950s. So my job was to get our table with the Cubs, 10 people. I think it was like $100 a ticket. all the money was going to a fundraiser for Ken Boyer, who was dying of cancer. And so I filled the whole table up with Ernie Banks and Billy Williams and Ron Santo, and I walked in, and he said to me, he says, God, Bob, you're going to have to go back to that table back there where nobody was sitting. He says, we don't have a seat for you. So I went back, and I sat there, and within 5 minutes,
Maris and Mantle sit down.
Maris and Mantle came in, but it started out with Whitey Ford and Yogi Berra and Bill Skowron and all my old Yankee guys from the 50s. Nobody was sitting to my left or right until this guy came up wearing blue jeans and a blue jean shirt and tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, partner, anybody sitting here? And I turned around. It was Mickey Mantle. And a minute later, Roger Maris tapped me on the other shoulder. He says, you mind if I grab the last seat? Well, I was speechless. And Brickhouse told me the next day, he said, I looked over at you, and you look like a little boy again who got his hand caught in the cookie jar.
It's pretty cool, though. Pretty cool.
Yeah,
No question.
it was a moment I never, ever forgot. And I was very blessed to have been with the Cubs for 10 years. And my son's kind of taken over the thing. He's assistant general manager with the Tampa Bay Rays now. So he always tells me, he says, Dad, I can't tell you any inside stories because, you're going on radio shows still. And he says, I don't want you to spill any beans that you shouldn't. So we have that little thing between us. Don't tell me anything you don't want me to know.
All right, fair enough. But what we do want people to know, though, Bob, is, again, Nikco Sports. That's NIKCO Sports.com. Telephone number, 800-345-2868. All of you listening, most of you by now, have my cell phone number. So if you didn't get a chance to jot that down, send me a text. I will get you the information on how you can get one of the limited edition footballs and help out as well. Extra Yard for Teachers, which has benefited 81,000 schools over the years, and now we'll be doing so for schools here in Indiana. Bob, a pleasure as always, and certainly appreciate you putting it together for IU fans.
Jake, it's good to hear from you again, and I'll tell you, always good to see stories like this unfold. It'll be something people will be talking about for years.
It is definitely, Bob, appreciate it. Definitely something people will be talking about for a long time. Of course, the question becomes, does Indiana, what can they do to replicate it? What can they do to advance the story, to use that term? All right, NFL has some coaching vacancies. And one of them actually got somebody chirping yesterday that had some quotes I found pretty interesting. We'll get into that. We will discuss that and Pacers as well upcoming here on this Hump Day Wednesday. Query & Company. Hey there, Jake Query for Chicago's Pizza. You know, you hear me talking about that lunch buffet, which is outstanding. But what about the family meal deal? Always a great option because Chicago's Pizza, which is dedicated to the community, dedicated towards giving back. We talked about all the great things they did over the course of the holidays. And coming up in 26, we're going to let you know ways that you can actually talk about great things you have witnessed within your own community, people that have done a solid, and how Chicago's Pizza wants to recognize them along with this radio station. But you can always recognize a great deal like the family meal deal for $25 at Chicago's Pizza, 2 medium, 1 topping pizzas, and a fresh order of breadsticks, all for just $25. Goes without saying, their lunch buffet at $13 out the door, including the salad bar, is also always a great option. Chicago's Pizza with multiple locations in Central Indiana. Find them online, chicagospizza.com.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Sorry, you'd asked me to have that ready, right? In terms of the music, I should have queued that up a little better, but it is Boston. That is because the Pacers are in Boston taking on the Celtics tonight. 7 o'clock tip, pregame at 6:30. We will get into some of the coaching vacancies in the National Football League. Whoever would have guessed that Boston would again be a team that is vying for a Super Bowl, because we just kind of hoped that the Patriots would stay in obscurity. Not the case. Celtics, of course, one that have last time here, Pacers played well against them, but Indiana right now is basically everyone's wearing a name tag because they continue to just jostle around with their roster lineup and players in, players out. Dustin Dopirak joins us from the Indianapolis Star. He, of course, is the beat writer that covers the Indiana Pacers and is in Beantown to discuss everything going on with Indiana. You know, again, I know that I am a broken record when I say this, but it's difficult for me sometimes to be able to determine with the Pacers even, okay, you know, who's out because they are legitimately out, who's out because they're just kind of, the Pacers are, you know, seeing what they have elsewhere. And then you also get, as Dustin joins us now, Dustin, it seems to me like we saw last game, and I think Neesmith and Nembhard are the two that come to mind here. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall in the past really them going to we're going to use rest days on back-to-backs, but it seems as though that's now being incorporated by Rick Carlisle, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're going to do that again. I imagine it also had something to do with it being the first game of a 5-game road trip, maybe. I guess we'll see when this becomes a thing. I mean, obviously, if you start seeing a lot of these, then you know the tank is really, really on. And so, yeah, I mean, it's you don't see it much. I mean, I think Pascal had the previous back-to-back, a previous back-to-back. He sat out that Golden State game when they had 10 guys out, and they scored 83 points in that game. So, I mean, I don't know if this is going to be a trend that they're going to do this for every back-to-back. It's probably different that it's home road. It's probably different that it's 5-game road trip. But it's obviously something that wouldn't happen if they were competitive. I mean they would not be doing that if they were 22 and 21 or whatever. It's something that happened because they were 10 and 31 I think going into that game or 10. Yeah, I think it was 10. No, it was 10 and 32. So yeah, like there's. That is changing the calculus. I don't know if it's going to be like that every time they have a back to them. Somebody else gets one next time, but that was definitely a case of, okay, we can do this because we're not in a competitive situation right now, and it's not the worst thing on earth for them to lose games.
Back-to-back, by the way, February 2nd and 3rd, Houston and Utah here in Indy. I want to begin with this in terms of players. And some of this is stuff that we have discussed a lot.
Sure.
Others, these things haven't ebb and flowed to us. Let's begin with this. Jay Huff, to me, at the beginning of the year, let me give you the evolution of the Jake Query process of Jay Huff, okay?
Sure, yeah.
Beginning of the year, man, they swung and missed on this guy. He can't play. He doesn't have any strength, can't play, looks nervous, can't play. Then later in the year, Jake Query's assessment. Boy, he hits 2 threes to start every single game, and then at the end of the night finishes with 8 points. But he can block some shots, and I'll give him credit there. Now, I'm like, okay, looks like a guy that could be a really nice 18 to 22 minute per night guy to spell your starting center. Maybe needs to bulk up defensively, but I think is a good piece for them. But I don't know that you win if he is your regular piece at the center position. Where do you believe that the brass of the Pacers feels he is in terms of the now and the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much right. I mean, I think you've seen, I'm not going off if they haven't told me, hey, we definitely think he's here. But, I mean, I think you've obviously seen enough, kind of smoke going around of them looking at starter caliber centers. But I mean, I would say one thing that Huff does that I think changes your calculus a little bit that I think you're seeing in some of those rumors is that if you have him as a backup option and he's a pick and pop guy, and somebody that can shoot threes, you can maybe afford to take a guy as a starter who doesn't shoot threes, who's a really good rebounder, really strong physical presence defensively, good rim protector, stuff like that. You can afford to take, not a chance, but you can afford to say, okay, that's what we're going to go with. We don't necessarily, if we have Huff in our back pocket and a guy who can really stretch the floor, then we can be okay with having somebody on the front line that's not necessarily a three-point shooter that does everything else. Like the Daniel Gaffords, the Ivica Zubac's, guys like that. I mean, Zubac's going to be tough to get because the Clippers are starting to get competitive. But, your Gaffords, Eves, Missy's, those guys become more of a possibility if you have a guy in your back pocket as a backup that can come in and shoot threes when you need him off the bench. So I think that's the case. I mean, if they the thought Huff could be the guy, they obviously wouldn't be as active as they seem to be when it comes to these discussions to get a starting five-man. And I think your assessment has mostly been right and it really tracks with mine that at first you're like, oh, man, this guy isn't who they thought he was going to be. But, I mean, you saw him start to block shots. You saw the three-point shot get a little bit better. And, and one thing that they've talked about a lot is that, he had to figure out the in-game conditioning. I mean, even if you train for it, the extent to which they want to run, and obviously they haven't been a good running and finishing team this year necessarily, but they still want to play fast and they still want to push it and they still want to defend, your guy for 94 feet and all those kinds of things. He had to get in better shape. Now, he was in bad shape, and he's a skinny guy overall, and there's only so much bulk you're going to add to him because he's had to do a lot of bulking up to get to this point. But, he's figured out how to play this way. He's figured out how to move off of these guys, to understand, how to operate in this sort of randomized action system. A lot of things have come together for him. The confidence is much, much better than it was a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I mean, there's a lot of progress, but yeah, I would agree. He makes sense as a bench piece more than he does as a long-term starter for them if they intend to be contenders again and if they intend to be contenders next year.
Has Huff's ability to protect the rim now taken away the necessity of finding that element within who it is that you're going to go out and get as your starter? In other words, can they say to themselves, hey, you know what? If we need rim protection, then we have that in Jay Huff and we can use that sparingly, and that means we don't need it out of our starter? Or are they still looking for someone that replicates all the things that Miles Turner brought?
I mean, you have to look at all the things Miles Turner brought. You have to try to get all those things. I think you want better. I think you might trade one or the other, the shooting or the shot blocking, for better rebounding. Is how I would put it. I mean, I think they want better rebounding. I think that's important. I think they know that's been something that's been an issue for them, and I think they would like to get that better. I mean, because you're probably not just going to go back and get Miles. Maybe you can, maybe Milwaukee's ready to sell right off of that, and maybe everybody can let bygones be bygones on everything. I doubt it, but I don't see that coming. That seems unlikely to me. But if you're looking at a bunch of guys, I think if you're going to have a guy who doesn't shoot, then you better have the rim protection. I don't think you're going to be okay with just having an around the basket scorer and a rebounder and a good defensive player if he can't either shoot or block shots. I think he has to do one of the two. And it seems to me like most of the guys that they've looked at that aren't shooters are rim protectors. I think you have to have one of those two elements if you don't have both.
Okay, I want to trade deadline coming up, Dustin. When exactly is the trade deadline?
February 5th at 3 p.m., I believe.
Okay. So we're looking at, we got what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that?
Yeah, touch over 2, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How much
of 2 in a day.
Okay. How much of Ben Mathurin not being available due to injury in any way, shape, or form impacts Indiana's activity at the trade deadline?
I mean, I think it matters. I think, Rick talked about him likely getting back on this trip. He's still ruled out for tonight against Boston. I mean, I'd have to think he gets back on the floor soon. If I'm a team that's interested, you got to shop him. I mean, I like shopping him. I think means getting him out on the floor, so the teams can see where he's at because he does have real injuries. They're not made up. The thumb sprain's not made up. He had the great toe sprain before. So I mean, those things are real. They're not made up. Like they didn't just come up with a phantom injury to get him off the floor so they could just sit there and rest him for whoever else might want him. I think if you're another team, you're going to want to see him get on the floor to see if he can help you now. If you're a contender in particular, you want to make sure that he's in a good enough place that he can be, what you're going to want him to be if you're going to be willing to part with a starting caliber center. Even if you're not a contender, you're going to want to see something, basically, even if it's a trade among two non-contenders. I think you're going to want to see something out of him to make that move. So I think it could make an impact. I mean, obviously, if he comes out and, suddenly we blows the doors off and he's a totally different guy, and it gets ripped to the point where it's like, okay, you can't move him, he's finally what I wanted him to be all this time, then that might change some things. But I do think it makes him a little bit more marketable if he gets out and shows something in a week and a half, 2 weeks, just to be like, okay, he's healthy, he's good, it was good that he took the time off, and he's going to be a useful player down the stretch for somebody. I mean, I think that makes some other things more palatable if he shows just a little bit in a couple of weeks.
Dustin, we've seen Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan pull off some miraculous trades that have gone in Indiana's favor. Obi Toppin is one, just to kind of name one of the few. Are other teams potentially, when they get that call from Kevin Pritchard or Chad Buchanan, they're like, wait, hold on, we need to rethink this, because if these guys are calling us, then we may have something here?
A little, but I mean, I think in fairness, I do think there's a lot of coaches in the league, GMs in the league that sort of understand when they have a guy who's good that they're never going to be able to use, and they don't have a problem necessarily with parting with those guys, and seeing them be successful someplace else. I mean, Aaron Nesmith and Obi Toppin are two examples. I think it just had gone south with the Knicks, basically, and it was just never going to work out with him. And he had to get another home, and I don't think the Knicks are probably that surprised that Obi fit in Indiana. And I think Aaron Nesmith's absolutely that case in Boston, that you can't. Anytime I've talked to anybody from Boston about him, they've been like, yeah, he just didn't have a chance with Jalen and Jason there. Like there was just never going to be an opportunity. So he had to go somewhere he was going to develop. He had to go somewhere he was going to play, and it wasn't going to be here. So yes, I would say that you're like, okay, if he's a guy that you're just not sure of, you probably recalculate your priors. But sometimes you're like, okay, this guy, we're just not going to be able to use him. And the Pacers have had guys like that. They had, I think back to the Daniel Tice situation where, like, Rick Carlisle knew he had a functional center in Daniel Tice, but he also had Jackson and Jalen Smith, and they were young guys and they needed minutes. And so Tice just didn't fit. And literally they cut him because the Clippers had a space for him. It wasn't because they didn't think he could play, but then they couldn't make a trade work out because nothing worked money-wise. So there are, like if there's an Yves Missy situation, that might be a guy that they could get, and the Pelicans are looking like, we're never going to have a real opportunity to showcase this guy. Like when the Heat just gave them Thomas Bryant, they're like, we don't have any use for him. Like we think he's a good player. We think he can help you. He can't help us because he's just not going to break through. They're going to look for guys like that, and I don't think other teams are going to feel bad. Feel like they messed up if they give a guy a chance that he was never going to get in their organization.
I realize health is a big part of what I'm about to ask Dustin. Dustin Opirek is our guest, Java House Peel and Pour guest line. He's with the Indianapolis Star. I realize health is a factor here, okay? But having said that,
sure.
Of these four players, I want you to tell me which one you think we will historically look back on this season and say it was the most missed opportunity for them to finally emerge. Ben Mathurin, Ben Shepherd, Jarris Walker, Isaiah Jackson.
Ben Mathurin. Yeah, Ben Mathurin. I think I might say Jarris Walker in a month. I do think Walker's done a couple good things lately, and I'm not. But I might change my mind on that. If Walker goes back south, I might elevate Walker over that, because Walker hasn't, like, what's amazing is, like, Walker hasn't missed a game. And just like considering all the time he was waiting to get an opportunity, there was a lot of squandered opportunity. I'm holding back of putting him there just because the last couple games I'm starting to see it. And, it was interesting for Carlisle to really push that. Now, part of that might be that, hey, if you are thinking of a big move, you need Walker to look good too, because you might have to move Mathurin and Walker together if you're swinging big enough. If you're looking for a $20 million player, you need to be able to package Mathurin and Walker together, because you need to get there for salary purposes. You might have to move both, and Carlisle might have been really making a point of pushing Walker to say, hey, everybody, take a look at this guy. But he's been better lately. He's legitimately done some things that you hadn't seen him do yet. I think that this defense has been better. He's been more solid defensively. Passing's been sharper, cutting's been sharper, drives have been sharper. Just everything's been a little bit better the last couple of weeks. So, but if that progress goes away, I might flip that. But Mathurin's had just so many opportunities. Some of it is also, he looked really good early. And, when he got hurt, when he got back the second time between injuries, really during that 11-game, that 13-game losing streak, and he played 11 of those games, you were like, where is Ben Mathurin, man? You're not even seeing what you're used to seeing out of him. And I thought, maybe even if he wasn't making a case for the Pacers, even if you were saying, okay, well, with Halliburton out, he can't really prove himself that he fits. It's just a question of him showing out so that he can get paid elsewhere. You didn't see him show out like that. Like the games before his first injury, and even, kind of early on in his return, you're like, okay, like this guy, he is a scorer. He is a good player. He makes them better. But that 11 games, like they were worse with him than they have been since he's been out. And, that I think strikes it as a missed opportunity. There was a chance for him, even if he wasn't going to make his money with the Pacers, that he could have made some money somewhere else.
And I feel like Isaiah Jackson, the unfortunate thing for Jackson has been the injury and the limit of times he's been able to be out on the floor. But Dustin, I'll be honest, I had not seen enough body of work or evidence to say that he had returned to his pre-injury self. Am I wrong?
Sure. Yeah, no, he'd admit that. I think he got in there and he said, like, we've asked. Isaiah is incredibly honest, and Isaiah gave us like very, pretty, not graphics, not the word, but he just, like, when we asked him about his concussion, he gave us every symptom he had, and like Isaiah's he's just that honest. You ask him a question, he gives you an answer. He was straightforward, telling us just how much weight he gained when he wasn't able to run, and how he gained it, going to Raising Cane's by the place he was getting hyperbaric work. And so if you ask Isaiah, he'll say, no, I'm not quite as explosive. Like, it does take a while to get back. And it does, I think, alarm bells isn't the word, but like you should then take that and apply it to Tyrese Halliburton too. And say that, like if you think Tyrese is going to walk in, he's going to be the same guy as he was in game 7 before the injury. He's not. It's going to take a while before, he's going to be able to play. He's going to be able to be useful. He's going to make them better, but you're not going to see top level Ty in October. It's going to be a few months at least. And I think that's the case with Isaiah. He would just tell you there's trusting it. There's the mental side of it. There's the conditioning side of it. There's your body changes. I mean, his body changed. He is, and I think you're going to see the same thing with Halliburton on not the same level. I think Isaiah got bigger than Halliburton's going to get. But you go a while without being able to do any cardio and your body changes. You can add some muscle. But you're not as light on your feet as you were. Isaiah was a long, skinny guy who jumped really, really high. And now he's bigger, stronger, more physical, and there's some things that have made him better with that, but he's not the same high flyer that he was. So you'll see, it impacts different people different ways. I mean, I think you're going to see a stronger Tyrese Halliburton in October. He is going to be better fit to deal with contact. Is he going to be as fast? I don't know. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch. So this is it. Again, it sets you back for a long time, and it changes your body. It changes your mind. It's an injury that does mess with you, and it takes you a while to come back and be the same person you were before it.
Indianapolis Star, where you can read his work. He'll have the coverage of the Pacers and Celtics for tonight's game. That is a 7 o'clock tip pregame at 6:30. And Dustin, it is a 7:30 tonight.
I think it is. I got to double check. Let me make sure about that. But I think I just saw that on the app, if I'm not mistaken. It is 7:30. Yes.
Looks like somebody's fine writing on our little board in here. Eddie needs some amendment.
Look at the today.
To call it Eddie there. I apologize, Eddie. I was not trying to call.
I'm Eddie.
Jake, look at the today on the Fan. We've got On the Horizon at 6.
Okay.
Pacers at Celtics at 7.
Dustin, do you ever watch Judge Judy?
No, it's on sometimes.
Judge Wapner. All right, we're going to let Dustin. We're going to play Judge Dustin. You ready? Judge Dustin. I'm looking at a board that Eddie, in his brilliant handwriting, that actually looks like most girls that I went to middle school with. But he does have nice penmanship.
That's amazing, actually. That's really a high compliment.
I know he has very good penmanship.
Accept it.
It says this week in sports: Pacers at Celtics Wednesday at 7 p. Pregame at 6:30 p. Underneath that, it says today. On the Horizon at 6 p.m. Pacers at Celtics at 7 p.m. That's all it says.
It's close enough. It's close 7.
Pre-game at 7, right?
Really?
Yes.
Pre-game at 7. All right, Dustin. Thanks for settling that up, even though you didn't actually offer any sort of a verdict, but I could tell you agreed with me,
I did
right?
not.
You felt my pain.
We're both right.
We're both right. That's fair. That's fair.
Exactly.
Appreciate it, Dustin.
All right, thanks, fellas.
All right, Dustin Dopirak, who's in Boston. By the way, the last time I was in Boston covering a Pacers-Celtics game, playoffs, Reggie Miller's last year, that was the year that I was dead asleep at about 2 o'clock in the morning. A little British fella came walking in the room with his little roll suitcase and said,
Was it a British version of Derek? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, very much so. And he said, excuse me, I believe you're in my room. And I said, clearly not. It appears as though you just walked into mine. And his name was Stinson. The only reason I know that is because he left. He
Barney Stinson?
What's that?
Barney Stinson from How I Met Your Mother? I didn't know he was British.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Do you like the Beatles? That's the first thing he asked me. But once he left, then all I know is Mr. Stinson apparently was still on British time because he put a wake-up call in for like 4:30 in the morning, which they called to my room at 4:30, like 5, 6, I think 7. Finally, I got so fed up and tired with it because I couldn't get any sleep that I went down to the front desk wearing boxers and a T-shirt, my hair all tousled, and was like, yeah, listen, I'm in room 238, and I'm not Mr. Stinson. Can you please? We're sorry, sir. So I still have 2 free nights at a hotel in Boston if you ever want to use them. I'm thinking statute of limitations probably wore out on that. I never did cash it in. But Pacers Celtics tonight, 7:30, pregame at 7. We come back. There are some job openings in the world of sports, and it could relate to one of your notable coaches here in Indy. We'll explain.
Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Now, Eddie, is this intentional?
This is intentional.
Okay, that's all I'll say. In the National Football League, there are a number of coaching vacancies. Several have been filled. Some of those kind of happened quietly, if you will. Kevin Stefanski going to Atlanta, leading Baker Mayfield to post. Of course, you never know anymore, like what's real, what's fake, whatever else. But it appears as though Baker Mayfield sent a post saying, I remember when, I'm paraphrasing, Stefanski was in Cleveland when Baker Mayfield was sent out, and he said, really looking forward to the coach that still has yet to call or text me after I was driven out of Cleveland. Looking forward to seeing you twice a year. But a multiple NFL Coach of the Year now in Atlanta. John Harbaugh in New York with the Giants. Tennessee getting defensive. And going with the former Jets coach that, if I recall correctly, I remember when the Jets made a coaching change, and this is one of those names that I always mispronounce. I realize that. Robert Salah, I always get it wrong. But either way, when he was with the Jets and got fired, I remember thinking, like, what? I mean, he got like a $50 million payout or some ridiculous amount of money. And at that time, I remember them saying, hey, what's your next move going to be? And I think he even said, like, I'm going to be on the beach for a while. I'm thinking, heck yeah. He's now in Tennessee, though, and a good coach, and a coach that, despite his record in New York, I think was seen as a defensive-minded, just kind of a tougher coach. And Tennessee just has, they are down and out for certain right now. And I do think Cam Ward started to show some things, though. But the jobs that are open, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, the Las Vegas Raiders, Baltimore, Cleveland, and Arizona. Now, of those jobs, I think if you had to list it, Baltimore and Buffalo would be the two most desirable because they have the most important piece, and that is quarterback. Now, you could factor in, do you want to go live in Buffalo? I get that. And eventually, at some point, you're going to start to question whether or not Josh Allen is, for the long term, the guy. I get that also, right? But with all of that said, he is still massively talented. That roster may not be as good as we think. And Allen, as talented as he is, we saw in the game where they were eliminated, taking care of the football. What do I always say? Teams, when they lose, it usually is a microcosm of their season. And Buffalo and Josh Allen taking care of the football sometimes has been a bugaboo. No question about that. But of those jobs, and Lou Anarumo, again, rumored to be, or going to, I should say, interview in Buffalo, where Buffalo has asked permission, correct, Eddie, to talk to Lou Anarumo?
That is correct. That was from Diana Rossini a few hours ago. Yeah, that Lou Anarumo has been requested to be interviewed by the Bills for their head coaching vacancy. Just a reminder, this is the third different team that has now reached out for Lou Anarumo. The New York Giants did it. I know initially when that job was open, Baltimore had not parted ways with John Harbaugh yet, so he was one of the names that a bunch of fans in New York were clamoring for. Then John Harbaugh became open. They're like, oh, we want Harbaugh. And then Tennessee, who hired Robert Saleh, they were also a team that interviewed Lou Anarumo, and now add the Buffalo Bills to the mix.
I always forget how to say Robert Saleh's name. It's kind of like Ebukam, right?
Bob Saleh?
Yeah, Bob Saleh.
Is
He's
Josh
a solid
Allen,
coach,
by the way?
right? Don't you think? Solid coach.
I don't know. The jury's still out. Like, he was obviously in New York with the Jets, but since Rex Ryan, who's succeeded with the Jets. But I got a good question for you. You've followed the NFL for a while now. Is Josh Allen this year's or this generation's John Elway? Where he's obviously one of the best players at his position, one of the best players in the league, but just somehow falls up short in the postseason?
Yes. But yes. But you could even make the argument that perhaps Allen has had previously. That's a very good comparison because Elway was so dangerous with his legs at a time when a lot of quarterbacks were not. You know, one of my more unpopular opinions, especially considering the market in which I'm working, but the more that I go through it, the more that I think that John Elway might be the greatest quarterback of all time in terms of raw talent. Now, I know Brady, to me, my level of respect for Tom Brady and appreciation for Tom Brady has really gone up since he's been in the booth because, and I'm not saying other quarterbacks wouldn't have this, his ability, like when he did a dissertation on the different angle in which you throw the football in wind versus non-wind conditions and the way you hold it and just the analytics of everything that his mind is able to tell you about playing the quarterback position. Maybe every quarterback has that, but it's pretty remarkable. And I know that Manning is amazing. And Manning, you know, I think I took for granted because I covered every game Manning played, just the greatness with which I was working because I had to look at it so antiseptically. But I can't deny that. But Elway, your point is a good one, Eddie, because Elway was a guy that forever was an elite talent producer that couldn't win the big games, quote unquote, until he had a running game. And then when they got out and they got him and they brought in Terrell Davis, all of a sudden, then boom, he wins back to back and then he rides off in the sunset.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I recently watched the Elway documentary, if I could talk. Documentary on Netflix. I'm like, that's Josh Allen.
Yeah,
like,
that's
that
fair.
is Josh Allen.
That is a very fair, because of his ability. The thing that Elway did that was so unique at that time was his ability to run and throw across his body mid-stride was almost unforeseen. You know, Tarkenton probably could do it, but it was almost unforeseen at the time in which he came in. Cunningham didn't have I don't think, he had the arm strength, but not the precision that Elway did. But I would say Buffalo, Baltimore are the two most desirable jobs that are available, followed probably by, I think Pittsburgh would be very high on the list because of the solidarity. You know, if you go to Pittsburgh, that you're probably going to be there a long time because they don't like to cycle through coaches. I don't know why Vegas would be of intrigue because you have the number one pick.
Yep.
Depends on how much you like Mendoza.
You got
have the number one pick.
You've got Brock Bowers.
That's it. I mean, correct. You have two solid pieces to support a young quarterback.
Max Crosby.
Cleveland and Arizona. Cleveland is just a dumpster fire at the quarterback position. That's the problem there. And I don't necessarily even mean that from the standpoint of talent within the quarterback room, but just you got guys that everybody wants this guy or that guy or this guy or that guy. Arizona, I don't think they have any idea what they're going to do with Kyler Murray, right?
Right. Obviously, that's somebody that's going to be on the move, it sounds like. But nothing, for sure just because of the contract that Kyler Murray's got. It's one of the worst contracts in the NFL, and finding a team, willing to take that and some of the question marks just around his character in terms of how much he is dedicated to the game. There's been so much about, a Call of Duty clause or whatever in his contract extension, this, that, and the other. I'm interested on the Pittsburgh front of things, though, out of all the jobs that are still open, because they had the oldest roster last year. They currently don't have a quarterback. I mean, they have Will Howard, who they drafted in, the 4th or 5th round this past April. But outside of that, there's not really a ton to work with offensively. Like, they don't have a marquee name wide receiver. Sure, they have DK Metcalf, but DK Metcalf isn't really the superstar receiver that some of these other teams have.
Doesn't it feel like Metcalf's also aging?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, you know what I mean? The sand's running through the hourglass on that one.
I did like their run game with Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren this past year, but outside of that, there's just not a lot to be desired on the offensive side of the football.
I think that and I'm guilty of this, I talked a lot for a long time about how the running game and the running back position have become kind of obsolete in today's NFL. And I say that, but yet if you look at Los Angeles, meaning the Rams, you look at Seattle for certain, their ability to complementary use their running game to keep defenses at bay and then get their passing game going when you have some of the weapons that Sam Darnold has, when you have some of the weapons that Matt Stafford has, it's going to be tough anyway to corral that passing game. But then all of a sudden, they just kind of knife at you here and there in the running game, and it changes things. It just does. It makes it, and Seattle is as good as anybody at it. Now, they may be banged up here, and we'll see what happens moving forward. But you got to have the backs as well, and that's why I think, Vegas, for example, I don't know that you go running reliant, but running complementary is certainly a good way of doing things. No question about it. We'll come back. J&B's in the building. I saw him walking around. We'll do the crossover. We'll find out what he's got going as well. We'll do it on the other side. Of course, that's brought to you by Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com, 317-353-2141, over 100 years in business for Love Heating and Air. Hey there, Jake Query. We're just talking about coaches and openings in football. What is every franchise looking for? They just want to get back in the game in that regard, right? They're trying to reclaim their game, and that's exactly what I know a lot of you guys are doing when it comes to game day men's health, especially if you're over 40. And I am super excited about the peptide therapies, for example. They actually have the peptide therapies, a ton of health benefits that are good for me. And that's what I love about game day men's health. They're going to come up with a game plan to help you get back in the game that is good for you, whether you're talking about testosterone replacement therapy, ED treatments, or the peptide therapies. With the multiple clinics in the Indy metro area, Avon, Carmel, Fishers, and Greenwood, they're using FDA-approved pharmacies, ensuring safety and, of course, the highest standard of care, but the care that is competent and caring about you and what it is that you want to feel better, feel healthier, get more energy, and be back in the game, guys. Then that's exactly what Game Day Men's Health is for. Find them online. Check out everything they have to offer. Get a consultation. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. That's GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
You're listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I believe I'm correct in this. Do you know what this song and NASA have in common, Eddie? There would be no reason for you to know this, by the way.
They're both out of this world?
Yes. Yes, you're actually correct, and I'll tell
really?
you why. I believe that I'm correct in this. I believe that NASA, or I think it was the NASA organization, put together essentially for lack of a better phrase, a time capsule, but basically an Earth capsule that they launched into orbit or released into orbit, and it has a number of trinkets to describe life on planet Earth. And it has in this, because as if somebody from the planet Enoch that discovers this is going to know how to work a CD player. They're probably going to say well, what the heck is this? Can I download this to my phone? But this floating box that's out in space contains a device to play music, and it has one disc with one song to describe what music is on planet Earth, and that song is Johnny Be Good by Chuck Berry. I'm 95% certain that I'm correct in that. If not, then I just told the weirdest story ever on radio of something that I had some sort of dream or vision, after eating a bad meal before 3:48 in the morning, which is entirely possible.
Or raiding my snack drawer. Thinking you were getting peach gummies instead.
When's the next time you're going to be in Seattle?
It's a good question. I don't know if we're making the Seattle trip this year. We got a bigger trip planned in a couple months.
Oh, where's that? Oh, I believe you told me this. Are you at liberty to divulge this?
Not yet. I don't want to jinx it, Jake. I don't want to jinx it. I want to make sure we are locked and loaded, but T's and I's dotted and crossed before I make that announcement.
Okay, fair enough. The other thing I was going to ask you about Seattle, I thought about this. I try to be very conscientious of the listening audience and of the brand of the station and what we're doing, right? I will readily admit, I'm not necessarily a fan of the Seahawks, but I've always loved their uniforms. And as I mentioned before, the Seattle Seahawks, when I was a kid, were always the late game. They were always the 4:00 game from the Kingdome. And they weren't very good. They were okay. I mean, they were always competitive. But
Kingdome or Kingdom?
That would be the Kingdome. The Kingdom of the Kingdome, right? And I have a fabulous shirt that you gave me that has the Kingdome on it that says Seattle. I love their colors. I love the Jim Zorn uniforms, the green, the blue, all that. And when I see, even though now they haven't played indoors in forever, when I see the Seahawks play, it does kind of remind me of those days, with like a fire in the fireplace and watching it when I was a little kid. And so I've always kind of liked the Seahawks. And I don't dislike per se, but the Rams are okay. They're cool. My buddy Andre Murray is a huge Rams fan. We got they're cool. But I'm not a fan of the Patriots. I'm just kind of on the Patriots. And I'm kind of on the Broncos. So I guess just by default, I'm like, yeah, I really do want to see Seattle win. And I have, I think, a total of, I might have 3 or 4 Seahawks t-shirts. And admittedly, I have them because I like the look of it and I like the logo. You got me one of them. Question is, considering I'm doing a sports talk radio program in Indianapolis, Indiana, and there are the Colts here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and people are Colts fans, and they're watching on YouTube, thank you very much, when I'm doing the show here. Is it not cool if I wear a Seahawks t-shirt when I'm doing the show? And I'm not doing it like in a I'm painting my face, let's go Seahawks way, as much as, yeah, I think they're sporty and fashionable and it's cool they're playing. Eddie, I'll let you be the judge and jury on this. Your thoughts?
If I'm being honest, Jake, I was doing some production work back here, so I only call Eddie. I'll bring you in on this. Your thoughts? Going to assume it has something to do with just the Seahawks and their uniforms and their colors being one of the greatest in all of sport, and I would agree.
Do you people? Are you hearing what it is here? In the song "Civil War," by Guns N' Roses. Do you have the song Civil War by Guns N' Roses queued up, Eddie?
I don't have it queued up, Jake. It's not like I have these things just at my disposal here. I've got to search for it, this, that,
What
and the
about Cool
other.
Hand Luke? Are
But
familiar
you
with
also
Cool Hand
did
Luke?
say earlier, Jake, that, the attention span of people is, not as long as as it used to be. And so you lost me there for a second after you were talking about Seattle. What did I miss?
Go ahead and pop me up over here if you could.
Okay.
We've got here is failure to communicate. Some men you just can't read.
That's right. I tried.
Get what we had here last week, which is the way.
That's from Cool
he
Hand Luke,
wants
by the way. No, I was simply asking. I'll let JMV answer. Okay, John. Here's my question for you. You ready?
Sure. Yes.
When I was a kid, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but in my memory, football games when I was a kid on Sunday, the late game, the 4:00 game, more often than not in my memory, I always remember seeing the Seattle Seahawks in the Kingdom.
Do you really?
I don't know why, but I loved their uniforms back then. I thought they were cool. So I have a handful of Seahawks T-shirts that I bought, mostly because I love the logo.
Sure.
But I'm like, you know what? I might as well give myself a rooting interest here down the stretch, and I'll just follow the Seahawks here since they're still in it. But is it uncool if I wear a Seahawks T-shirt doing a radio show in Indianapolis this week?
I don't think so. Is it throwback too?
Yeah,
I think you can wear a throwback of anybody's.
Yeah, they're throwback.
And it's not like the Seahawks are this huge rival of the Colts, and the Seahawks aren't keeping the Colts out of the postseason. The Colts are keeping the Colts out of the postseason.
You got sunburn, by the way.
Did I really?
Yeah,
I didn't think so, man.
Yeah, you got a
Did I
little
really?
Uh-huh.
Huh. I had a good-ass time down there, buddy. Let me tell you.
How much sleep did you get?
Not much. I was on the bus that was struggling yesterday trying to get back here.
Yeah.
I was between two dudes. It was like three bros. I was the last one on the plane on the way down and on the way back. I have no idea how that happens. Well, I do know when I was going down, I was in the bar, and then somebody said, "Hey, you know what? This is last call for your flight here." And I go, "Oh, okay." So I jumped on it, but I was last on coming back yesterday.
No, wait, so
too.
were you on an airline that had assigned seating? Or
No, it was
festival seating?
Southwest. I was Southwest.
Yeah, so
the
you-
rest,
so
the rest
you were
of the
in the middle.
group went Allegiant. I went Southwest.
So you were in the middle.
I was in the middle. I
Yeah,
took
that's-
the last seat on the plane available. It was full, except for the seat that my ass sat down in.
Yeah. You're the guy that everybody's like, there were two. You
Yeah.
know that there were two people that
Two
were sitting there
bros
like,
right
man,
there.
This would be. They're like, oh man, this would be huge if nobody shows up in this middle seat. And
They
then
were
you show
both
up.
hanging incredibly as low as me, too. It was like three hanging low bros back there.
What
And the
percent of that
507.
crowd was Indiana? 60, 40?
65. I said 65. I thought easily 65.
Now, other than the foobar of getting in the stadium, and I think you played it smart because you got there late, and so it wasn't as hectic.
Shout out to Kyle Kinnett, man.
Yeah, for the driver, right?
He got me a driver and a black SUV, and that guy got me out there 30 minutes before the kick. And then
That's
he was
the way to do it.
He was waiting in the parking lot for me when I was done.
That's the way to do it. Now,
Yeah.
but how was the stadium? Is it a cool stadium?
I think it's great. There's not a bad seat in the place, to be honest. Yeah, the
That's
only
what it looks
thing,
like.
there are no TVs in the concourse.
It
That's
doesn't
weird.
look very big. Like, it doesn't look like it's a huge venue. That's my one complaint with Lucas Oil has always been it's so cavernous. It's almost too big.
Well, they have the F1 race. They have a track. The F1 track goes around the stadium.
That's
there.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So you got to walk over that to go there. But I thought it was easy in and easy out. We actually beat the bus back by an hour and a half because it was me and J-Law who came back with me in this SUV. And then the people I was sitting next to, Mike and somebody else, I apologize for not remembering the name. They were just sitting there, and I said, hey, you guys want to get back quicker than going on this bus? They go, oh, yeah. So they just –
Nice.
Now, the problem I had is I forgot where he parked, and I had to call him and go, hey, Lenny, I forgot where am I here? I couldn't remember where he was in the parking lot, but we got out there okay and got back. All of Zionsville, Jake, was in this Diplomat Hotel. I met everybody from Zionsville.
Half of Hamilton County was up there, too.
Yeah,
as
it was
well as
incredible.
Purdue. Yes, Eddie.
Two quick things before we go.
Yeah.
John,
Yeah?
happy belated birthday to Lainey Lou.
Laney Lou was 16 yesterday.
Today, it's my sister's birthday, so happy birthday, sister.
That's
Nice.
awesome. Hey, Blake is the 26th, and he's going to Miami Friday as a birthday gift.
Oh, boy.
Nice.
Yeah. Blake Thomas is going to Miami to
make
have
sure
her loose.
Lenny's down there
Does
to
he have a
drive him around.
I'm going to get Lenny to drive him around. But no, thank you, Eddie. Yeah, Lenny had a great 16th yesterday, so
All right.
thank you.
John's up next. He'll bring you home. We'll be back with you noon tomorrow. I thank you for listening to Aquarian Company.